Hello, everybody. Welcome to our AEW Double or Nothing review. I am John Pollock, joined by Ting.
We are here Sunday night, almost midnight.
We're here Sunday night. We're here Monday night. We're here most nights, as it works out. But I'm glad to be talking to you, Way.
Me too, John. Yeah. How do you feel after that show?
I felt pretty good about it by the final 90 minutes of that show, because I would say going into the final two matches, I thought like this, I had pretty high hopes for those two matches. So I was going into it already like that these are going to be the big matches on the show. But I do have to say, and we'll get specific, I did feel up until that point, this was feeling like one of the more pedestrian AEW pay-per-views that I've seen in their totality. I would state like it was a lot of things, like a lot of like wonky things that just occurred on this show, but I was not feeling like a high level AEW pay-per-view going into those last two matches.
I think that's good perspective because I'm still coming off the fumes of those last two matches. Really,
I think that's what is going to define the show is those last two, and you ended with two unbelievably spectacular matches, and I think that is much better to end that way than to start that way and fizzle out throughout the show. So, I mean, we can certainly talk more about grading this as a show versus the individual matches. But yeah, I would certainly say there were some underwhelming points to this show that just did not meet certain expectations, which invariably are very high for AEW, but regardless, that is the expectation level that you have. And you can certainly elevate those expectations when we always bring up the fact like this is a significantly higher price pay-per-view than your industry rival, for instance, and your big shows. It is going to come with that level of expectation with it as well.
Certainly, yeah. Maybe, some discussion about the build leading up to this as well, but we're here to talk about the event itself. A reminder, you can get your super chats in if you would like to get your thoughts in about this tonight's show. You can jump the line as well. If you're a patron at postwrestlingcafe.com or video.postwrestling.com, you have the link to call in. Just go to the community tab if you're a member, and also if you're a patron, look in your email mailbox. You can also, if you're a Post Wrestling Cafe patron, leave feedback at forum.postwrestling.com.
Yes. And on Monday's show, we'll catch up on all of the news. Neither of us obviously have had a chance to see Battleground yet, but also Master Wato winning the Best of the Super Juniors tournament, and a big passing, especially in the UK with promoter Brian Dixon passing away. So those are some of the news items, but we will catch up on all of the news on Monday's show. If you do want to get a recap of Battleground and have not seen it, John Cino does have a report up on the site going through all of that from Lowell, Massachusetts. But we are going to the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada for the fourth Double or Nothing, the fifth Double or Nothing. As I do the math in my head. Yeah. 19, 20, 21, and 22, and now 23.
Oh, wow. Okay. The time flies.
Huh? They grow up so fast. The buy-in, this was in many ways much closer to a WWE style of preview or at least kickoff show, complete with like the panel and one match at the end. I mean, most kickoffs now for WWE have no matches, but they only put one match on the preview. And we had Renee Paquette.
I believe they started this format last time, right? Remember when RJ was a part of these shows?
RJ was a part of it, but we didn't have like the 4-person panel like we had.
It was a 2-person panel last time, but you're right. Okay. So they expanded it.
And then RJ was set up in the back. But our panel, standing panel, was Renee Paquette, Kazim Famude, who was formerly a writer with WWE and works with The Ringer, does stuff on the WWE network as well. Paul White, who was strategically positioned right next to Stokely Hathaway and towered over this man.
As he would most people. Yeah.
Yes. Paul White also, did you notice that he also got into the Guinness Book of Records with Natalya?
I did not.
He used the term heads on a swivel 3 times within about 30 seconds in one of his match breakdowns. That I was a crutch term for Paul White as he was previewing Anarchy in the Arena. And then they threw to an interview of Jim Ross doing a sit down with Don Callis. And sadly, we had like 40 minutes of talking on this show and then a like 15-minute match. And we only got 30 seconds of this. I implore everyone to watch this entire 12.5-minute sit down that Jim Ross did with Don Callis. Have you had a chance to see this, or did you just see the clip?
I didn't even know about it.
I just happened to see it. They posted it this afternoon on their YouTube, and it was a 13-minute sit down. And Jim Ross he's great in these. It's just, and Don Callis, it's just throwing softballs and he hits them out of the park. But it's Jim Ross is trying to get to the bottom of his attack on Jon Moxley. And Don Callis gives the origin story, how he knew the Golden Sheik, who was Kenny's uncle, and states how little he thinks of Kenny Omega. He said, the last time I saw the real Kenny Omega was against Will Ospreay in January. And he said that nothing worked in trying to get through to this guy. And he says the reason he didn't have children himself is because inevitably his superior DNA would end up diluted, and then he would have to look at his child as a disappointment. And that's what he sees now in Kenny Omega. He wanted no association with the Young Bucks to begin with. They have been dragging Kenny down, and he saw him and Kenny as a modern-day Bobby Heenan and Nick Bockwinkel. But instead of that pairing, Omega chose to be one of the Three Stooges with Matt and Nick. And I needed to do something impactful because Jim Ross says, why did you have to use a screwdriver? Why couldn't you talk to him and try and get through to him? He said that wouldn't have had enough impact. Slapping him in the face would not have sent Kenny away. He would have come back to me. I had to do something more significant, like a screwdriver to the head. And says, don't let anyone tell you differently. Kenny's mother, Marla, is disgusted with Kenny. His uncle is rolling in his grave, and said, Kenny is like a son to me, but it's like having a son with Einstein's intellect, but he chooses to work at a convenience store. The convenience store being teaming with the Young Bucks. And you cannot be both great and weak at the same time. But the Bucks have made him weak, and you will never be great without me, Kenny. Kenny, you became a cancer eating away at me. So what do you do with cancer? You cut it out. Dude, this was such an awesome promo from Don Callis. I thought this thing, it should have aired on this preview show. It would have been the best thing on this preview show. I would have taken out time to air this on the pay-per-view, and I'd replay it again on Dynamite. Do yourself a favor and watch this whole thing, because Don Callis was fantastic in breaking this down and his superior DNA, not wanting it diluted by having children.
Sounds like the promo we should have had on the Go Home show.
I don't even want to get this. Should have been on television instead of on YouTube. It should have been seen for everyone, because it was really well done. And so what? You dedicate 12 minutes. This is your A1 angle. So I thought it was really great. So you got 30 seconds of this on the buy-in, but I was buying into watching all of this. And then Jim Ross is brought out to join Excalibur and Taz for the first half. So we got Jim Ross on the first half. Dude, there was a lot of bickering at times on this broadcast, where it's just like little lines here and there, and it just seemed like corrections that they were making to each other, and it was just it was awkward at times, I found.
How much of that is Jim Ross?
Some of it is Jim Ross. Others, like he corrected Taz at one point, and he was right. But then the way Taz is, thanks a lot for correcting me there. Maybe next time I can just give you a shovel. It was just like, when you have commentary, I want to hear people that especially when they're all like baby faces, I want to hear people that I believe like are enjoying each other's company. And this just felt awkward at times.
Tends to be Jim Ross's style. You know, he's pointing out sort of like what he believes are the truths here. And if there's any sort of like, you know, awkwardness, I mean, maybe it just comes down to their styles. It didn't make that big of it wasn't that big of an issue for me that I really noticed it all that much, apart from the usual. So they
were also positioned ringside, which at one point Tony Schiavone said, this is the first time we've been ringside, and Excalibur cuts in second time, Fyter Fest 2019. I was like, okay, I wasn't at that show. And anyway, I don't think this made any difference other than they made a aesthetic change to put them ringside. So they were in the midst of Anarchy in the arena.
It gave them a weapon. It gave a lot of people a new place to attack people. Yeah.
And Excalibur kept stating on the pay-per-view over 11,000 people at the arena. This afternoon, WrestleTix had it listed at 10,229. So that is probably the legitimate range of tickets that they distributed for the show. And the buy-in had our one match of Ethan Page with his contract at stake and the Guns taking on the Hardys with Hook, who is replacing Brother Zay, who was out with them in a neck brace. And this was actually Jeff's first real match, excluding the firm deletion, since last year's Double or Nothing.
A lot of returns, a lot of first matches in a long, long time for a lot of people, but his layoff might have been the longest. Yeah,
it was, and maybe was felt in this match as well, because there were definitely some issues here. So Paige and Austin start going after Brother Zay, and they rip off his neck brace, and Matt is checking on him as Colton then drop kicks Matt as he rolls back in, and Ethan Page is doing the Hardy taunts, and then they're doing the delete when Matt stops him with a twist of fate. And Jeff gets the tag. He comes in and delivers a splash onto Austin for a 2 count, and then goes for a twist of fate. And it was almost like he rolled his ankle or something on this, because then he goes right into this whisper in the wind, and he just spills, slipping on the top rope, which, I mean, you're doing that whisper in the wind, and that's a nasty fall to be taking.
It felt very much to me like a worked injury. I mean, it just looked so exaggerated, the way he twisted his ankle in the twist of fate and the way he fell off of the ropes too. It was it looked very intentional, like as if they were trying to sell this ring rust story. But I mean, and the announcers,
I just thought were quick on the draw here, because it really didn't play into anything.
Well, that's the issue. Like, I could understand wanting to sell a ring rust story with a guy, coming off an 11-month layoff, and that whole thing made sense, but it didn't really play any part in the finish, and that's what kind of confused me. But yeah, I mean, I think we've seen.
I didn't think Jeff looked great in this match before this spot. I think it was other than give him an Emmy for this performance, but I did not think he looked great in this match. And I mean, he's 45 and he hasn't wrestled in a year, so I mean
I'm sure we'll find out soon enough if he's actually injured. It looked intentional to me, but I could be wrong. But either way, I think it was maybe poorly communicated, especially the fact that it didn't really matter in the end.
No, it was, if anything, it just got Jeff out of the match, and he just sold in the corner for forever. And that was like, I took as like selling. And Jeff does manage a poetry in motion as he's like limping, and then just gets up for a splash. There's a 310 to Yuma on Matt, and then they go for the double pin as Jeff is just waiting in position on the top, and then hits the swanton to break up the cover.
So that's I think is the fault of some of the direction on the show, which I thought many times throughout the night was pretty poor, missing a lot of key spots. And hey, for a match like Anarchy in the arena, I give them a lot of slack because that's a hard match to cover. Same with the Battle Royal. But moments like this, are designed to specifically hide the person, waiting to break up the pinfall. And unfortunately, there are a lot of moments like that that were unfortunately kind of spoiled.
So he breaks up the pinfall, the double pinfall by the Guns onto Matt as Jeff hits the swanton. And then it's a twist of fate to Ethan Page. Matt hits one, and Hook gets the red rum and submits Ethan in 15 minutes and 47 seconds. And they did not even make a whole big deal about the contract after this. I don't even know if it might have been mentioned, but it was not a...
Excalibur mentioned it, but okay. He's right not to make a big deal out of it, because it's not a big deal at this point.
It was the whole point of the match, though.
I know, but it's a stupid storyline that nobody gives a shit about. So I think it's almost like, I don't know why they keep going to this well, dealing with fucking contracts. And it's just like, as good as like some of the performances were, I thought Paige was great. I thought Hook was great. Hey, the Hardys, like, we'll find out if it was a legit injury or just a really poor creative choice. But all that stuff is just kind of like shadowed by some of the awful story that's been taking place as a part of this feud. I don't know, get ready for more vignettes on Rampage of like, I don't know, Matt forcing Ethan Page can't do his finishers, or some bullshit like that. Nobody wants this sort of storytelling.
Yeah, I thought this match went too long. The audience wasn't even all that into it, and for a Hardys match, that is to me somewhat a negative, because that's a big thing of what they have is the crowd reaction, because I think these two guys, I mean, it's getting tougher and tougher for them. So Hook was, I think it's a fine association to have Hook attached with them. And yeah, Ethan Page was very entertaining in this, but I thought this
Hook helps them, but this does not help Hook. He should not be involved with this sort of stuff. He should be, at this point, several years now into his run, he should have his own like substantial storyline rather than being an accessory to the Hardys. I thought like the Guns, looked good as well. Like they had the benefit of being the first match up, so it had good energy from the crowd, like decent action. Again, maybe the whole injury aside, but I'm not looking forward to more of the storyline.
Recommend or don't recommend this match? I say no.
If you only have so much time and you want to cherry pick from this 5-hour show, then no, you could skip this.
Then they reminded us, because they had promoted this weeks ago, but did not make a big deal about it going into the show. Next will be the opening ceremonies for the Owen Hart Foundation tournament. I was like, oh, okay. We're going to get the names for who is in the tournament. That's what I would assume from a opening ceremonies. Instead, it was Renee and Martha Hart who were out. And Martha says that this year, the tournament is going to be a bit more gangster, which is answering the criticisms of so many people about what last year's tournament, that's what it lacked. A little bit more gangster is what we needed. This was coming from Martha Hart was just something else.
This was like everybody's mom picking them up from school and having like some incredibly cringeworthy announcement. Like she let this off by saying, last year I told everybody to bring their bling and their fancy fascinators. This year we're going more gangster. I'm like, oh my, I can't believe this was like, I can't believe like that should be her character. This would be a great like wrestling gimmick at this point. Mom who just embarrasses everybody. Anyway, that was Martha's role. I thought we were getting at the opening ceremonies at Forbidden Door, like at one time, or was that ever communicated?
This was called the opening ceremony. Yeah. This wasn't much of a ceremony.
So we're getting the opening matches at Forbidden Door.
Yeah, it's going to kick off in Toronto that weekend. And then she said, so this year, get your fedoras out, and out comes Tony Khan in an Owen Hart fedora. And what is going on here, dude? This was like, and tied it into the Calgary Stampede, which is where the tournaments are going to end in Calgary in July. But dude, this was a segment.
This is quite the way to start off the Owen Hart tournament. Yes.
Yeah, it was something. And then they gave us the hard sell. The last 10 minutes, we got to see entrances for the Blackjack Battle Royal. Like, you mean I'm not going to get to see this?
Hey, they've done this before. They've done this where they've done the entrances prior to the start of the pay-per-view. I think it's a pretty good gimmick. It feels like you're getting a taste of the show without actually really giving anything away.
So our international championship Blackjack Battle Royal starts the pay-per-view, and we had Orange Cassidy defending the title with the Best Friends, Bandito, Tony Nese, Josh Woods, Ari Daivari, Lee Moriarty, Big Bill, Commander, The Butcher, Blade, Kip Sabian, Jay White, Juice Robinson, Dustin Rhodes, Keith Lee, Ricky Starks, Penta and Phoenix, Brian Cage, and Swerve Strickland, which, if my counting is correct, that would be 22 people.
Well, in wrestling, if you got 21, I got 22.
That was obviously the tribute spot that they were doing. So
no like weird entrances, like everybody just starts off. No like, suits or anything like that for this one.
No. Sorry, I thought I was imagining everyone wearing suits after the last segment with their fedoras, but no, they were not doing the card.
This is not gangster.
The cards. Yes, no hearts. No, the hearts were reserved for the last segment.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
got it. Okay, so. The rules are you have to first enter the ring in order to be part of the match. So this gave an out for Commander to do his rope walk, because apparently walking the rope does not constitute entering the ring, because he did his rope walk and dove onto Bill and Moriarty, which I thought was his Mil Mascaras moment of the Battle Royal, but he was still in this.
It made sense. He was not technically a part of the match yet, so he could go and do his high flying antics. Now he did try it a second time, and that's how he actually got eliminated.
It was his downfall later.
Yeah.
So I'm not going through all of these, but we saw the luchadors all gang up to protect Bandito as he delivered a vertical suplex to Nice and fight everyone off. Swerve and Cage just stood on the ramp for a while before Cage entered, and eventually Swerve came in. And yes, Commander scales the top again, and Jay White just shoves him to the floor, which I wasn't shedding any tears for Commander's strategy. Swerve and Lee finally go at it as we are going to, maybe it'll be next year's Double or Nothing. They're going to have the singles match.
Eventually,
this is the slowest paced feud in AEW history.
It could come actually like pretty soon.
Watch, it's going to be on a Rampage one week.
Most of this feud has been, so yeah, I could see that.
We saw Cage come from behind and send out Keith Lee, and the crowd was very upset to see Keith Lee gone. And White then caught Penta with the Blade Runner, but then Starks is in, spears White, and eliminates him for the huge pop. And this is after throwing Juice out. So Starks did get to eliminate both White and Juice Robinson. But with that, Big Bill boots out Starks, and they gave a lot to Big Bill. Getting him to the final four. And I thought he stood out in this match. Like he had that really good tag match a few weeks ago on Dynamite. And I think they see a lot in this guy. He had improved a lot in Impact when he was getting a lot more singles opportunities. Yeah. And I'm fine to see this guy get a little bit more.
They gave him the big man heel spot here. And of all the big men that are currently on the roster, he's at this point, like he really does feel like a veteran. And more so on the heel side of things. Cause like you do have like a Keith Lee who I wouldn't necessarily say is competing for the same role, but like, Big Bill is like a great hand. Unfortunately the firm has just kind of, vanished and never really amounted to much, but he's impressed in pretty much every appearance that they've had.
Dustin did a destroyer onto Brian Cage on the edge to eliminate Brian Cage, and then Swerve knocks Dustin out. So the final four are Swerve, Orange Cassidy, Big Bill, and Penta. And Bill clotheslines Penta out. Bill and Swerve then argue over who's going to eliminate Orange Cassidy. And as Bill lifts up Cassidy and military presses him, Swerve shoves Bill, who ends up out onto the floor, and we get this great ending with Orange Cassidy and Swerve, and they just dial it up to 10 here with Prince Nana sweeping the leg, and a Swerve stomp connects, and he puts Cassidy's hands into the pockets, and we get Cassidy coming back with a pair of spinning DDTs. Both men end up onto the edge of the apron, and Swerve comes off for the Swerve stomp. Cassidy gets his boots up, and Swerve is holding on by his hand, and Cassidy just calmly kicks the hand, it breaks free, and Swerve lands on the floor in 22 minutes and 28 seconds. I thought by the end of the show, I thought this was on the better end of the match quality on the undercard. This one I would recommend, and I thought, especially once it got down to got the numbers down, but they set up a lot of things in here. They built up several people, and the final two with Swerve and Cassidy was a lot of fun. I'm hoping that they do this match, and it seems like they would coming out of this.
This was actually my third favorite match on the show. Like up until the four-way, this was my favorite thing on the show. I'd go as far as to say this might have been my favorite AEW Battle Royal. And so much of it is because I think we've seen, trials and tribulations when it comes to AEW and battle royals dating back to, maybe that initial Double or Nothing or whenever they started these. They've often either been too busy, too disorganized, or maybe not active enough. This one I thought really kind of hit that perfect spot where it did a great job of keeping audiences focused on one single thing happening at a time and gave you just like memorable segments for the various people that were participating in this. Like the whole thing with the luchadors teaming together to take on everybody, I thought was awesome for all of them. You had the best friends doing everything they could to protect Orange Cassidy's title, like including Trent sacrificing himself.
Yeah, we glossed over some of the eliminations, but yeah, Trent took the bullet to save Orange Cassidy.
Lee and Swerve get to continue whatever they've got. I mean, Starks and Jay White and Juice kind of have their thing going on as well. Big Bill getting like, some really great shine as the big man, but it was the final two showdown between Swerve and Orange that was just, to me, amazing, because they, first of all, the choice of Swerve to be the final two was great because you and I had discussed, out of everybody in the field, he seemed the most likely to actually beat Orange Cassidy, and by the time he came out second last, I was pretty convinced that Swerve was going to win this. So what was brilliant about this concept is that you built up this Orange Cassidy reign to be so important, and you can now literally dangle it by a thread. You can hang it, you can put it in balance, with a simple, like, Orange Cassidy like letting go from the top rope and being eliminated. He could have lost the reign that way. And I thought they wonderfully teased that with every like skin the cat, every like, hanging on to the rope. But to me, my favorite part, Swerve again was amazing. Number one, he's like more than capable of like usurping Orange Cassidy to live up to the legacy that he's built up thus far. But I think his horror movie villainous matches perfectly with like the weird like superhero that Orange Cassidy has become. But my favorite thing was the fact that they managed to find a scenario where Orange Cassidy's lazy kick was a believable finisher. Like Swerve is hanging by a thread and Orange resorts to the lazy kick to help him win this match in a legitimate fashion. I thought it was brilliant.
This was a really well done battle royal. To me, it's not technically AEW, but to me, the high standard was that over the budget battle royal at Allin, which I thought was so well put together. But yeah, this was one of the better battle royals I've seen in a long time. And one thing you can say is that pretty much, I would say like 3/4 of the people in this battle royal had existing stories. And this is not an easy match to put together. And for the commentators to keep you abreast of all what's going on, I thought they did a pretty good job. And I think that Swerve is a very strong candidate that I would be the one to take this title from Orange Cassidy that you
100%.
have coming out of this.
I thought tonight like presented a very satisfied scenario for Swerve to actually win the championship. But I think this is better because now you get to build up to an actual match between the two, which I'm really excited for.
Next match was Chris Jericho with the Jericho Appreciation Society taking on Adam Cole with Roderick Strong. And I'm putting my hands up in the air what Sabu's role was, because they were even debating it on commentary of, isn't this guy the referee? Why is he throwing chairs at Jericho? And then Excalibur's explaining, well, he's actually in their corner. And then he was just taken away completely, and the match was just left to Jericho and Cole.
The confusion comes from the billing of Sabu as special enforcer, when all the creative, everything you've seen on TV does nothing to suggest that he's supposed to be impartial in this match. I don't know why they billed him as a special enforcer, Like,
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it really didn't matter, but it was just like, how do you have two separate distinctions that are being presented? Like, how does the graphic not match the angle? And it's not as though Adam Cole was setting him up as Adam Cole was clearly getting him as backup.
He walked out with Adam Cole with the chair as he was attacking. He was in Adam Cole's corner. So I mean,
and the graphic did not change from TV this week to tonight. Like, it stayed the same. It's not as though, we should update this because it's confusing. We left it there. And then you had Jim Ross and Excalibur arguing, and it's like I couldn't even tell who was right. Like, I don't even know what we're supposed to do.
I mean, could it be that just like Tony Khan has a very different definition of what a special enforcer is? Like it made no sense. No, this was a fumble for sure.
Jericho's family was seated in the front row, and we get Cole coming out with Strong and Sabu, and they're all bringing out chairs. And we immediately get a brawl as the bell rings, and Jericho and Sabu have a chair duel. And with that, Matt Menard gets set up on a table on the floor, and Sabu climbs. And this was scary to say the least, watching this man leap off this top turnbuckle and go through the table with Matt Menard. And this is where Ross is asking, isn't this guy the referee? This is very uncharacteristic. And Taz agrees with Jim Ross. He's like, I think he is. Excalibur says, well, it's actually in Adam Cole's corner. And then they all brawl to the back, and we just have a regular match, a hardcore unsanctioned match afterwards. What Sabu's role was, I have no idea, but I was glad the man at least survived this table spot.
I don't think JR was wrong to call this out. I mean, we were all wondering the same thing.
We were asking about it on the preview because the angle was very simple on Wednesday. It was set up as he being in the corner. And then this graphic and the way they positioned it was, I mean, it was just poor messaging.
His role was to, you know, generate a bit of a pop on Wednesday.
Special run-in, Sabu. They could have just labeled it that. Table spot for Sabu. Yeah. So they went on to have a unsanctioned match that went 19 minutes. And they had their challenges here with this crowd. Like, this was not an AEW crowd where they were just red hot for everything. It was like, this was an audience. You had to win them over. And for stuff that they were not into, they were not just going to default to loving it and being loud. And this was one that struggled with this crowd.
Yeah.
Jericho stopped multiple Panama Sunrises, and they came up with different weapon spots. And this was probably a tough match to do on a show where so much was earmarked for that main event. And putting this together, you don't want to go too far. And let's remember, you also have a ladder match sandwiched in between this and Anarchy in the arena. So you could argue, certainly, like, you booked this, and this could have been one too many, you know, hardcore style of matches on a show that is hinging on a gigantic 30-minute version. Cole is run knee first into the steps, and man, did he go hard into those stairs. And Jericho gets sent into a chair. There's a Panama Sunrise that gets caught. He puts him into the walls, and Cole fights to the rope, but there's no rope breaks because it's unsanctioned. So he reaches under the ring for a fire extinguisher, a unsanctioned fire extinguisher, and sprays Jericho in the face with it and goes for the boom, but it's caught with a code breaker. Now Jericho uses the extinguisher and then takes this extinguisher and just drops it onto Adam Cole's midsection.
Yeah.
This is like what he did with that water bottle. Remember? It was like, these are the thuds that to me register the most. Could you imagine? Like, I would be willing to take a guy spraying me in the face with a fire extinguisher. Sure. Dropping that thing onto my ribs. No way. No way. I don't think I could physically do it without getting my hands up there.
Would you rather take like a double stomp or a fire extinguisher dropped on your chest?
I'd take the double stomp over the fire extinguisher.
I think so too.
There's just no way to protect your I just, man, it takes something there. So Jericho brings out a kendo stick, and with this, Britt Baker runs down, attacking Jericho with her own kendo stick. And dude, she lit this guy up like the 4th of July, and his side was all marked up. She hit him with so many kendo stick shots.
So, I mean, we had a bit of this attack backstage, if you remember, a few weeks ago. And a lot of it came off of the controversy from that t-shirt. And so I have to imagine, like, even without the t-shirt, you know, controversy, like, there was probably a little bit of sensitivity in portraying Britt Baker as this, like, sort of damsel in distress with that angle, and making sure that she doesn't come across that way, because she is your most popular competitor in the women's division. So it's very important that she defend herself and, you know, was able to give Jericho his comeuppance here. And in case, sorry, you got to love Jim Ross, because in case you didn't know, thank you, Jim Ross, for reminding us that Adam Cole and Britt Baker are a couple.
But they're not married.
Yeah. So made sure to specify that for all of us a year into their role here.
So Saraya runs down and fights with Baker, and Baker chases her to the back, and Jericho gets a chain, and Jim Ross asks, he calls it a steel chain, and he ponders, are there any chains that aren't steel? I don't think there are. They're probably all steel chains.
They're plastic chains.
Plastic chains.
I mean, like toy chains.
Yeah, but for practical use, I mean, they're probably steel's got the.
Are you sure they have, like? Are there no alloy chains?
We'll do some research before our next
gold chains, huh?
Well, gold is
it's not steel.
I guess not. So, this chain comes with handcuffs. Can't just get this at the Home Hardware. Okay, with handcuffs.
No, this is a custom. Yeah,
you have to go to like a, I don't know, like
one of those special stores,
sex shop or something for these. Yeah. And chains himself to Adam Cole, and then Cole handcuffs himself to Jericho, and Jericho gets hit with a Panama Sunrise while they're chained together. I thought this did look cool. But the near fall, not the reaction you would expect for kicking out of this chained together Panama Sunrise. And it's like the Panama Sunrise, very well protected. And this audience, like, they did not respond to it as some giant kick out.
I find that throughout the whole match. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the reactions were muted.
And listen, if you were to have told me like the layout of this match, like I would have looked at it and I was like, okay, I'm sure like this, there's different spots and that I would assume would have worked, that being one of them. Cole ducks a Judas effect and he gets choked with the chain, kicks off the turnbuckle to escape, hits the boom, and then wraps the chain around his knee for another boom. And he gets on top and starts delivering ground and pound to Jericho's face using the chain and busts him open around his eye. This looked like a tamer version of the Lesnar Orton finish, where it was just like laying in shots on Jericho until Aubrey Edwards calls for the stoppage at 18:59. And there were boos for this with the stoppage, the way it was. And yeah, I can't say like this one could not have reached what these two I think were aiming for. And I'm someone I like stoppage finishes. I wish there was more of them, but you can't argue this did not work with this crowd. And that's a risk you do when you do unconventional finishes. But I think in the long run, doing more stoppages, I just think it gives you more options down the road and fans accepting them. But this crowd did not. So yeah, there was a lot that missed the mark here, and probably not the match you wanted for an Adam Cole, even though, technically like they did some clever things, but it was a battle with this crowd.
So I think in AEW, when you build something as an unsanctioned match, these audiences have seen so much within that realm, okay, and they're about to at the end of this evening see maybe the greatest example of it all, that you have to do a whole lot to convince an audience that a match is worth stopping. And not to maybe harp on a cliche, but we didn't even get to see blood here, or at least not that much of it from Jericho. And maybe that was part of the dissatisfaction. I think a lot of it might have been the creative as well, and maybe a general sort of like I'm sensing a lot of like audiences not being into Jericho programs lately. They haven't been great. Starting with the Ricky Starks one, which took forever. This one I would only say was mildly better. The angle with Britt Baker, I think, ultimately turned out pretty well. Gave them some great fuel to have Adam Cole cut great promos with. But to me, I thought the high point was the Roddy match with Jericho backstage, and I actually felt like that match was better than this. Now, they had a lot more to do in that one than they did in this one. And unfortunately, they couldn't brawl into the back because that was, because that's essentially an Anarchy in the Arena match. I thought this was like a good hardcore match, but it had its faults. I think, number one, we have to continue to mention the Sabu billing, which I think just tripped some of us up. The Extinguisher stuff I thought was a little bit clunky in timing. Handcuffs I thought were good, but man, crowd energy just wasn't really there for it. They weren't really with what I think this match was designed for. So good, but not to the level that you would expect.
It was a tough placement. Like as Jericho noted with that famous match with Kevin Owens, you never want to be second. Second is the word. You never want to be second on the show. And it was yeah, like I think under normal circumstances, like if this was in front of a different crowd, I think they would have got it into more. Like there was a lot of stuff in this that you look as like easy spots for reactions from the crowd, but maybe it was just following a 21-minute battle royal with a 19-20 minute follow up with it, and knowing that how violent is this going to get when you have so much coming up on this show as well. But it also didn't necessarily feel like, well, the follow-up is Wednesday where they're going to do a tag match that feels like what this was ultimately building to, with Jericho and Baker Jericho and Saraya against Cole and Baker.
Yeah. It's hard to again, compare something like this to something like a Blackpool Combat Club, because I really do feel like now the bar for a blood feud is so different. There's so much more realism when you're looking at a John Moxley versus a Chris Jericho trying to sell a blood feud, which to me comes across a whole lot more like it's almost kind of cartoonish and a little bit campy. It's great on its own, but it's hard to sell unsanctioned, blood stoppage, like that sort of thing, on the same show as an Anarchy in the Arena.
FTR against Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal for the AEW tag titles, with Mark Briscoe as the referee. And Mark Briscoe just called it down the middle, right up until the end.
Except the start, where he forgot, I think, for a second that he was actually the referee, because he completely missed an initial count from Jay Lethal.
Oh, I didn't even note that. Well, He figured out after
the announcers were covering for him by saying that this is his first day on the job. So, there's a lot of pressure.
Well, Jarrett and Lethal, I mean, this to me was just, this is a really well-worked tag match. And this one, I mean, they did have the story here with Mark Briscoe. And this one I thought did work with the crowd. But they send Cash to the floor and he's sent into the guardrail. And Karen starts choking him and they get the heat on Cash, breaking down his knee after a dragon screw. They apply a figure 4. And then he leapfrogs Lethal and he stumbles to the corner on his bad knee to tag Dax. So Dax is in and he's running wild on Lethal. Jarrett then runs Cash into the post from the apron and they lift him up for Dax sends Lethal up for a doomsday powerbomb. Cash hits a tope suicida and Sanjay Dutt gets involved, yanking Dax off of Lethal for the pin. And this is when Mark Briscoe ejects Sanjay Dutt and Satnam Singh. Jarrett goes for the guitar shot, missing Dax, and he nails Mark Briscoe with a guitar shot. And after all these years of all the weapon shots you have seen Mark Briscoe take, this one put him out cold for about 5 minutes on the mat. He was out. This was the lethal chair shot.
I think when you're a referee,
guitar shot.
I think when you're a referee, you just happen to be more susceptible, and your healing powers are just for some reason diminished.
Well, they stop a lethal injection. They hit the shatter machine, but no referee. So Aubrey runs down and Sanjay Dutt plays interference and blocks her. And then she knocks down Sanjay and then boom, Karen nails Aubrey with a hell of a guitar shot. This leads to a double lethal injection onto FTR and Dax avoids a belt shot, hits the pile driver to Lethal. And then there's a belt shot by Jarrett and the stroke. Mark is coming to and he counts. Dax kicks out for the big pop and Jarrett is screaming and he slaps Mark, who strikes him back, sending Jeff into the shatter machine in 19 minutes and 56 seconds. FTR and Mark Briscoe hug. And I thought this worked. I thought that this was all built towards the finish here. I enjoyed this tag match quite a bit.
So it's called the Shatter Machine, not the Big Rig anymore for some reason.
They've been calling it the Shatter Machine now for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I wonder why.
I don't know why the change, other than they're calling it the Shatter Machine.
I thought the crowd really ate up all the stuff with like Karen, Aubrey, Sanjay, all the way from like the shenanigans until the close. I thought the match was really successful. I have to say, I thought a lot of the in-ring action itself for an FTR match, I thought was kind of dull. I did actually feel a little bit of the drag for this one. And maybe it's because I know in the back of my head, this is going to be a match involving a whole lot of shenanigans. I mean, at this point, this faction has more people sitting outside of the ring than inside. So you knew something was going to happen, but I thought it was effective by the end. But a part of me didn't really like this for a pay-per-view. Like when I see FTR in a tag team title defense on a pay-per-view, I don't really want sports entertainment. I don't want so much gimmicky like stuff. I want a solid, like pure professional wrestling match. It was fine. I think it was worth doing this match because Jarrett and Lethal have been hot. The sketches have been fun, but it's time to get back into some serious, like dream match level match of the year type of contenders for FTR on these shows. We don't have many FTR pay-per-view title defenses, I'm betting. And it's time we finally like get to some of those.
You're not hoping for a House of Torture showdown?
Oh God.
The lights go out at Scotiabank Arena.
Don't threaten me, man.
Alex Marvez catches up with Ricky Starks, and he talks about eliminating Jay White and Juice Robinson, and boom, the two jump them, and they get chased away by FTR, who are making their way to the back, and they're checking on Ricky. So we've got FTR. They've got allegiances to Mark Briscoe and Ricky Starks, but obviously by design here, getting FTR involved with Jay White and Juice Robinson.
Mm-hmm. So could this be something for Forbidden Door or just something for TV, you think?
Yeah, I'll be curious if they end up going with the IWGP Tag Champions with FTR for that pay-per-view or something. It'll be interesting how Jay White is utilized on that show.
Yeah, does it set up like a Bullet Club type of thing where BC Gold can team up with House of Torture and Bullet Club and the OC and whatever they got at Impact? Who else we got? Any other Bullet Club standouts?
Maybe Eddie Kingston will give him a one night visitor's pass to return to New Japan after losing that match.
Sure. Yeah.
Jericho, who's got the bad eye after the match, he's with Saraya and calls Adam Cole insane and a barbarian. And Saraya calls Baker a bitch. They want a tag match this Wednesday on Dynamite. And then a security member comes in and tells them to calm down. And with that, he takes a fireball as Jericho reminds him, I'm a wizard, bitch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then if you're worried about a firewall, maybe you should jump on to NordVPN, which would have gotten this poor guy out of harm's way here if he knew what was coming. Don't get burned by the competition. Come check out nordvpn.com/postwrestling.
I was waiting for the segue, and that might have been your best yet. Technically, I don't know how worrying about a firewall would lead you to get a VPN. Like in fact, I think they would work in tandem with each other. But very good, John. And yes, our thanks to our sponsor, NordVPN, for the show. If you are an AEW fan, this is really the perfect complement to your fandom, especially if you're a fan in North America, where, again, every single week I watch AEW on AEW Plus, which is not available to us in North America. But if you are able to sign in through another country, you can have access to it. Commercial free editions of these shows. The entire Dynamite and Rampage archives are available. It's also great if you are looking to order pay-per-views, because if you sign on to perhaps a place like the United Kingdom, you can find these pay-per-views for a much cheaper price by logging through a VPN. But perhaps the most valuable reason for getting a VPN, as John alluded to, is your online privacy. If you do any sort of downloading of content, or if you use any sort of public Wi-Fi, then you should have concerns about unwanted tracking from advertisers, ISPs, phishing sites, and hackers. And NordVPN has over 5,000 servers around the world, doubling down by keeping you safe with their new threat protection feature. Even if you download an infected file, threat protection kicks in and deletes it before it makes a mess of your computer. So sign up right now, nordvpn.com/postwrestling, where Post listeners can get an exclusive deal, 4 extra months on top of all 2-year subscriptions, or 3 extra months on top of all 1-year subscriptions. That's about $3.17 US a month for a 28-month plan. Nord also offers its 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you don't like them within a month, tell them you want your money back, and that is it. Again, nordvpn.com/postwrestling to let them know you found out through us. Our thanks again to Nord for their sponsor of Post.
Yes, it is the top of the ladder of VPN services. As we go to our next match involving Wardlow and Christian Cage for the TNT Championship. Christian comes out in his new attire of a black sleeveless turtleneck to wrestle in and sends Luchasaurus to the back. They're going over his ladder match history, and Wardlow walks underneath the ladder. And about 10 minutes later, this dude would have been regretting that choice. Because, man,
yeah, what
they have a moment in this match.
This,
so,
if you weren't superstitious before, this would have made you. Yes,
this would have made you a believer. Wardlow just starts smashing Christian with this ladder, and they set up 2 tables on the floor, and Christian gets placed on them, and Wardlow climbs to the top, but gets knocked off by Christian. And we got a turtleneck chant for Christian. Clearly, this crowd really engaged here at the beginning. Wardlow then lifts him for a powerbomb, and Cage grabs the ladder and climbs, but then gets thrown off. Luchasaurus returns at this point, rolls Cage in to stop Wardlow from climbing, and hits an inverted DDT. So then Wardlow hits a flapjack on the ladder and misses with a swanton, and he lands on the ladder. Just looked nasty. Arn comes down, and he whispers something into Wardlow's ear, and then he leaps from the turnbuckle onto the ladder. And Wardlow is a big man. So when he is jumping onto this ladder in the middle of the ring, the steps on the ladder tapped out and they broke as this man landed. And this ladder is totally destroyed, as I thought Wardlow's shin was, because he goes down with this ladder and it just looks like a nasty fall. And you're just hoping this guy has not just destroyed something on his body. But this guy is like, well, got to get back to this spot. So he puts this destroyed ladder up. It's not at all safe to be climbing. The announcers are like, get a new ladder. But he is determined to climb this fucking ladder.
I'm assuming he didn't realize it was like as broken as it was.
It was the opposite side that maybe he could not see it, because Rick Knox can, and he runs in and he holds the ladder as
he's waving it. He's waving him off. He's telling him you can't use this one, basically.
Well, but Wardlow was, so he went to hold it, and when he held it, it took the other legs down, and Wardlow falls off.
I didn't see it as him holding it, but I mean, who knows? Like Rick Knox was basically doing something. Yes.
And Wardlow is pissed, and I'm just watching this match totally fall apart at this point. And from there, Luchasaurus comes in and choke slams Wardlow. And this was almost that, like, let's all just take a minute here. Let's all figure out what was supposed to happen, and let's regain our bearings. And then Arn comes in, and Luchasaurus grabs him by the throat, and Arn has the most comical look on his face. I mean, this was a comic book villain about to choke slam Arn.
This was the night of like Arn Anderson memes. Yes, absolutely.
So Arn, I mean, maybe this guy was just reading about Tim Woods and the famous story about him calling a guy in for a match and then biting his finger off. So Arn bites on Luchasaurus's thumb. And then this guy looks like a vampire because there's blood all over Arn's face. And they show Luchasaurus's, like, whatever this like gimmicked thumb is, like that he's bitten Luchasaurus's thumb off.
They did like fake blood on his thumb, which was certainly bold, a bold way.
Dude, I thought this match was just dead at this point.
Oh, completely.
I was like, this is a disaster. This whole thing, this thumb is just awful. And the crowd doesn't even know it. Like, it's hard enough if you're at home to like see this thumb and what they're doing. I can't imagine the 11,000 people here who are trying to figure out what's going on.
I mean, I thought the blood was specifically there to show the live audience that Arn bit, and that's why he broke out of it. But I mean, it was a bit much.
A bit much.
Yes.
Luchasaurus then gets set onto a bunch of tables on the floor, and Wardlow climbs up this giant ladder. And I'm just thinking, like, this guy is probably not in the best of moods at this point.
His leg must be fucked too.
His leg, I was worried like his leg might be injured.
Yeah.
But dude, he climbs to the top of this thing, and this is not like one set of stairs down. He's on the top of it.
The Jeff Hardy ladder.
This guy is a lot bigger than Jeff Hardy, and he pauses. He does a pose on top of this ladder, and he hits this beautiful swanton. And at this point, dude, this guy he got this out of the jaws of defeat and pulled this thing back. And this is going to be the visual that is always associated with this match, and not a bladed thumb. And
it was picture perfect. Like, I think better than Jeff Hardy's like highlight reels, because
it's just such a bigger man. And remember, Jeff Hardy wrecked his heels on that spot, so I'm hoping he landed okay here, and that this guy came out injury free from this match, because there were multiple candidates for injury for him. And then we had Christian Cage with a nod to the famous Vince McMahon shot from WrestleMania 19, peeking over the edge of the apron, looking sinister. And he climbs the ladder. Arn tips the ladder, and Cage is caught by Wardlow for a power bomb, and Wardlow climbs to grab the title at 17 minutes and 10 seconds. This was about as lost of a match as I've seen Christian in years. And dude, they pulled it out of the fire, and Wardlow deserves credit. Like the swanton, very risky spot, but they won this back with that spot at the end. So I have to give these guys the win at the end for this. But it was looking very dark in the middle of this match. Like, I just thought this thing had fallen off the rails.
I'm very pleased that like you and I have basically like the same sort of roller coaster emotions related to this match, because like it was dead. This match was incredibly ugly at parts. Somehow they got through it, and ultimately you look at this and it's like, no one is really to blame. A ladder break like that is a bit of a freak accident even in professional wrestling. And I don't know. I mean, maybe people who really know ladders and know how much like weight distribution works for a guy like Wardlow, maybe they could have predicted it, but most of us probably could not. Okay. And it's no one's fault. But man, like, I thought at one point this match was going to be stopped. I thought like Wardlow like was going to be like on the sidelines with an injury. There were also like a lot of parts where I was really concerned about Christian taking the amount of punishment, like that Alabama slam on the ladder.
Yeah,
like a lot of this stuff is like, man, like this guy is on
I
a
don't
second
want to
career.
see Christian in these ladder matches. And to be truthful, like, yes, this match will be remembered for the ladder spots and the swanton, but I think as well, like, could you have had this match without the ladder? I would argue you could have, but it was a big spectacle because of it. It's just, I don't think Christian needs to be doing ladder matches at this stage of his career. He does not need them.
Agreed. But man, we're going to remember this match for how Wardlow recovered after something like that. This whole time, I think what we've been missing from Wardlow are these like memorable performances. Outside of the MJF feud, he's kind of been floundering, and he's just been doing shit that is not all that memorable. Tonight, he delivered that. He pulled himself together, pulled himself up that ladder, and delivered a picture-perfect swanton off of a giant ladder. By far the most impressive spot of Wardlow's career, something that should be on every like AEW highlight reel. And then like after that, came back into the ring and had a wonderful, he caught Christian after being tipped off the ladder by Arn. That
really
was
good
also,
closing spot that they had.
that was also really impressive. So like this match should be remembered for how Wardlow was able to hold it together, especially with whatever injury he might have suffered from that leg. Impressive from him.
Yeah, I just would have loved the think tank of, you know what, guys? What about Arn doing the spine buster to Luchasaurus? Yeah, we were thinking something else. How about he bites his thumb off? Yeah.
Yeah, but how's the audience going to know that he bit him?
Well, we're going to make it very dramatic and very visual. And the man, I mean, dude, if you saw this visual of Arn Anderson with his blood all over his mouth, I mean, it was
funny.
The most ridiculous things. Jamie Hayter and Toni Storm followed that for the AEW Women's Championship. And Hayter's music plays twice. And on the second time, Saraya and Soho have attacked her and bring her out onto the ramp. It's a 3-on-1 attack as they are bringing up her shoulder injury. And if you had any doubt, like, she has been dealing with this shoulder injury, and you could certainly like see how limited she was and how they structured this match around that injury. Because this one went 3 minutes, and I think that it was the most you could have asked for her to go through with this, because her shoulder did not look good here. And Paul Turner is just a masochist. This dude is watching her destroyed by these 3 women with her arm all bandaged up. She's rolled into the ring, ring the bell. And then Paul Turner's like, watch it. Saraya's just up there casually with like taking off the turnbuckle pad. Turner's like, what can I do? And then Baker attacks Saraya and removes her from ringside. Turner gets sent into the exposed buckle. Good.
This part was weird. Like, they were doing a pretty big ref bump with like Paul Turner into the exposed turnbuckle, but he just recovered and managed to like count like normal for the next near fall.
Yeah,
so I don't know
if he had been hit by a guitar.
I mean, maybe he should have traded places with Mark Briscoe. He clearly could recover better.
So yeah, this is not, Turner is not about to call for a bell here at all. He's
getting ready for Forbidden Door.
It's playoff season.
Yeah.
Ruby Soho spray paints Hayter in the face, hip attack by Storm, and Hayter kicks out. They were trying to like have Hayter just still overcome the odds. Sheeta shows up to take care of Ruby Soho with a kendo stick, and Toni Storm gets sent into the exposed buckle, and she is hit with Haterade, but because Hayter's arm is hurt, it's a delayed cover, and Storm kicks out of Haterade. With that, Jamie Hayter rips off the tape from her arm, and here you can see the bruising on this arm and the status that it is in. So Hayter goes for the Haterade, and Toni Storm does a standing switch, and unfortunately, after this standing switch, Jamie Hayter sends herself into the corner before Toni Storm can like push her or do anything. So it's like Jamie Hayter was like possessed and sends herself into the exposed buckle, and then Storm just shoves her and or does not shove her and hits the Storm Zero and wins in 3 minutes and 2 seconds and becomes the new champion. So, I mean, this is a match that it's very hard to grade. Like, this was a woman who probably should not have been wrestling on this show. And the fact they took the title off of her, maybe that does suggest like their concern of when she will be back. But yeah, this ending was not smooth.
Yeah, pretty clunky, as like like a lot of outcasts like shenanigans tend to be. And yeah, this one you had the unfortunate handicap of someone who clearly wasn't 100%. But in either case, I think this was the right move. Number one, if she's injured, then you solve that. But even if she's ready to go, you're setting up a Jamie Hayter chase for a championship in Wembley, which I think is a very good route that they could take this. So hopefully he's good enough for that. The fact that she was able to do as much physicality today gives me hope that she'll be able to have a full match by then.
Yeah, and perhaps we'll get an update coming out of the press conference about the status of Jamie Hayter, although they are very tight-lipped when it comes to injuries and status of performers. House of Black defend the Trios Championships against the Acclaimed and Daddy Ass, which it was treated as this huge surprise that it was the Acclaimed and Daddy Ass, even though like they laid out the challenge on Rampage and all but said they would be the ones challenging. So Max does a rap.
I was going to say, so dealer's choice was no dealer's choice, right?
I thought it was there's no rope breaks because there was a point in the match when Bowens was reaching for the rope and one of the announcers said there's no rope breaks.
I heard like Jim Ross or somebody say, or Tony say like dealer's choice was no dealer's choice.
Okay, why? Whatever. Why would you not make a choice?
I don't know.
Well, I thought it made no sense because Bowens is in this knee bar and he's reaching for the rope and he's like, well, there's no rope breaks. I'm like, if you chose this, and now you're reaching for the rope. And
chat room, step in here. We need some clarification. Or are you guys just as confused?
They definitely said this in the match that there were no rope breaks.
Oh, okay. So, well, is that just because it's a whatever? Sure.
It's a
Acclaim. So Brian says Acclaim waived the dealer's choice.
Well, then why were there no rope breaks?
Is that just the trios rule?
Oh, that's part of the open house rules.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That was it, right? Because it's what, the 20 count, no rope breaks. Yeah, that's right.
I don't fucking know what there's like 50
So they
rules.
didn't even use the dealer's choice. Like,
yeah,
they couldn't have just come up with anything. Like,
I don't know why they needed to make this an open challenge. I know that's part of the house rules, but like Wednesday we had a pre-announced, set of challengers. Whatever. Like
it doesn't matter.
Who cares?
Max does a rap. He calls Brody King a reject from RuPaul's Drag Race. Malachi is doing blackface or gets away with doing blackface. More on that later. Buddy Matthews is getting cucked by a kid named Dominic, and they are going to beat their emo asses.
That was a good line. I'm sure it was hard for, like, I wonder if Buddy Murphy was trying hard to like keep a straight face when they I don't know if
his crowd reacted to it, and so did the announcers. They all got it.
Yeah.
So Scissor Me Timbers gets stopped when Bowens comes off and gets caught in the knee bar. This is where he goes for the rope break and doesn't even know the rules of the match he has accepted the open challenge for. They beat on Bowens for about an hour before on his knee. Black reapplies the knee bar as Buddy hits a Meteora. They continue to work on it. There's a cannonball by King, and then he avoids Dante's Inferno. King and Matthews are sent to the floor. He's crawling, and he kicks Black away, leaps for Billy Gunn, but King yanks him off. There was something about Anthony Bowens here, this guy in the prime of his athletic career, reaching for 59-year-old Billy Gunn for help. And Billy can't make the hot tag.
Billy is the monster. Like he
is the big hot tag.
He's their Brody King. Like that's how he's portrayed. Yeah.
Yes. Billy's Inferno. Bowens lands a super kick to Matthews, tags Gunn, and Gunn was just, this man is just something else.
Oh man. Yeah.
He just yells at Brody King, "Fuck you," and hits the famouser. Then he hits one to Matthews, and then Billy is standing up. He's so happy. And Malachi Black just stands from behind. I'm like, yes, this is all I wanted out of this match. Boom. He's a masked man. And Billy Gunn goes down in 15 minutes and 20 seconds. That's all I needed out of this match was this guy taking the back heel kick.
Actually, I think Excalibur called it something. He called it, I believe, the end. Like as in Tommy End, I suppose.
Okay.
Black Mass is way better.
It's been this back heel kick for like 2 years in this company, and now he's like, you know what, guys? it's the end.
Yeah. It could have
Took you this long for that.
I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, I thought ended up being a good trios match, but the crowd reaction was weak for it. And at this point, I wonder how much of it was the crowd versus maybe how much was the wrestling itself.
I think the Acclaimed have cooled off.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not saying like to the point that it's of no addition to a show, but this is not where they were like 6 months ago.
I just didn't think there was much to the feud. I mean, the fact that it was an open challenge, well, they had been kind of building it, but I just didn't think it was all that hot. I thought they did a really good job of heating up Bowens, great barrage of like leg submissions from Malachi, great selling from Bowens, but the match never really hit the next gear and maybe wasn't even designed to at this,
Yeah, it was fine. I wouldn't say like I look at these trios championships, and especially with House of Black, I would be looking at like this needs to be what like your big kick-ass trios match on the show. I wouldn't say it reached that level.
Man, this guy, like a Rolling Stone 63, brings up a great point. Didn't the Acclaim win a trios battle royal to get the shot?
Yes, they won the trios battle royal.
So they didn't need to answer an open challenge anyway. Like I don't know why they didn't build this ahead of time. Like they deserved a shot.
I guess they could pick their. They were going to cash in their shot when they least suspect it. So House of Black would not be able to prepare for this match. So it makes their loss even more.
So I guess House of Black don't watch Rampage because they clearly laid out their plans.
No, they were watching
the NBA.
No, they had nothing to watch on Friday night. Maybe they were. They
forgot what time it was on. They thought it was Saturday, 6:30.
Jade Cargill defends the TBS championship against Taya Valkyrie, and Jade had a hell of an entrance here with a Big Boss Vet. Are you familiar with her?
I'm not familiar. Yeah, Taya had a pretty big entrance too.
Yeah, she came out with two dancers. It's kind of like where you come out and then she was dwarfed, I thought, by Jade Cargill's entrance, which was the more elaborate one. But nonetheless, they came up with like non-normal entrances for these two. And she performed Pretty Girls Walk. And were they explaining that like the women on the ramp were her sorority sisters?
Yeah, they're members of AKA sorority, which like has some sort of long-standing history as like a an African American sorority or something to that effect, of which Jade Cargill was a member previously. So they explained
this was a really cool entrance for Jade Cargill, I thought. And they showed her husband, former Major League Baseball player Brandon Phillips, with their daughter. And Taya immediately goes to Road to Valhalla, and it's avoided. And Taya takes out Mark Sterling with a high cross, and then Layla Gray gets involved, not in a very convincing fashion with Taya. It kind of felt like just things stood still as Jade finally sent Taya to the floor off the apron. She hits a series of ripcord clotheslines and applies a sleeper onto Taya, which is then broken up by a blue thunder bomb. And then Jade goes for a springboard, and it's caught with a lung blower, or at least close to the lungs.
Attempted.
She was trying to. Yes. Taya gets a near fall and then hits Road to Valhalla. And this got a big reaction when Jade kicked out of it. It was not the most authoritative kick out, but I don't know how many near fall spots Jade has done that have been like believable ones.
Might have been the biggest one.
I think it was definitely the biggest one. It's like she's done a few like roll up spots, but nothing like this. And Jade then just, unfortunately, like the camera, it was a very bad looking kick to the jaw that it was just at the angle that you saw. It was like really off, which set up Jaded, and she pinned her in 8:44, improving to 60-0. So the audience certainly responded to like Road to Valhalla. I didn't think this was like the best match. It was better than the last one that they had where Taya couldn't use the Road to Valhalla, which is the whole kind of purpose of this program, and gave you the near fall here.
Yeah, I thought this was a better match than that. I thought they, the big success of the match is the fact that they managed to achieve like a really good near fall. And I think that's something they can, hang their hat on. Overall, I kind of felt the match was okay. I thought Jade looked good for her abilities, but is this a good match compared to the rest of the show, which is what I was looking for by this point from Jade?
No, this was on the lower end.
Lower end. But I didn't think Taya looked that great either, to be honest with you.
There was, like the involvement with like Layla Gray. I thought it was just a very weird spot where she was getting involved from the floor. And it was, I certainly feel these two could have a better match together. And I think it was just a case of like some timing that was off, especially with that bad looking kick at the end. But Jade's night was not over because Sterling says that she will defend the title anytime, any place, but there's no one left. And then Kris Statlander returns to a thunderous reaction. And this crowd, this was not the biggest reaction on the show, but this was among them. It was a genuine surprise, unless you listen to Wai Ting's previews and prognostications. And Jade puts the title on the line against Kris Statlander. And Jade immediately misses a pump kick. And there's a running boot in the corner by Kris. And then Jade gets lifted. She stops, lands the pump kick, but then Jade gets blocked. And Kris Statlander hits her with now the renamed Sunday Night Fever, pinning Jade in 49 seconds. And huge pop for the title change, the surprise loss, the first loss for Jade Cargill, and now our second TBS champion. So this was certainly a debated booking choice. In the arena, I imagine this was one of the highlights of the show. And quite honestly, with an undercard that we've just gone through, I thought like this was one of the bigger moments on the entire show because this had not been the most overwhelming show up until this point. I also think it instantly creates a program for Jade and a certain rematch that you get out of it. But I can also see the idea that building up to this streak ending, was this the best way to do it, unannounced and a surprise? And I guess time will tell if this was the way to do it or not.
I think it's kind of interesting. We're talking about this after like Asuka versus Belair, which is very much like a surprise sort of a finish as well. But while I liked Asuka versus Belair, and because I think it sets up a new direction for Belair, and I hated this. I thought this was the wrong way of doing this. They did the WrestleMania 9 finish, with Hogan, Yoko. And I think it's really bad to have your babyface win this way. She didn't earn this at all. She's facing somebody who's already weakened. It had no logic back in WrestleMania 9 why Fuji would, ultimately like just let Hulk Hogan challenge Yokozuna for a championship after going through that match. And it made no sense here why Sterling would put up this title against Jade Cargill after this match. I mean, she's done it in the past, I suppose, with like squash matches, but not after like hard fought matches. It found the logic I thought was missing. I thought there needed to be a better reason for Jade to offer the match. But I was more so disappointed at how you positioned Statlander as somebody who just basically kind of like snuck their way in. It's similar to like a Money in the Bank briefcase surprise cash in, but for a babyface. And I don't think those ever work out well. So instead of like giving us this big earned moment for Statlander finally conquering Jade's streak, it just kind of happened,
Yeah. And I think like it's hard to like, this certainly got over with the crowd, but so
it always does.
All of those cash-ins as well. So, I mean, time will tell here, but, and number one, I think Jade ending up as a babyface at some point is inevitable. There's many who take to her like that anyway, but even if this sets up Jade into a babyface role, I would not like Kris Statlander. To me, her return, like this is someone that is very over with your crowd. I would not want to have her playing heel coming out of this either. I think that's a wasted return for her. So we will see where this goes, but I can certainly see the argument against it. I guess I didn't have a strong opinion either way.
It's just a shame because they had 60 matches, to build Jade Cargill up to the point where you'd want that win to really feel special. And I think just maybe like in their promotion and their handling of saying Kris Statlander is the one to finally give Jade Cargill her first loss. This is great for Kris Statlander. If they push her strong, then she will get over. But I just felt like this moment, this start should have been a lot more earned from her. Should not have been in this fashion.
Do you think it is rectified at all if they do like the rematch and this is like a main event on television that they can build it up? Or...
Yeah, I think that would help. Although like a lot of the drama would be lost, like think of those great near falls that you would have had in like a full on match, with Kris Statlander fighting from behind and everything. You kind of lose it all.
MJF, Jack Perry, Sammy Guevara, and Darby Allin going on second from the top. So what did you think about the decision to put them in this position as opposed to on last?
A little surprised. Has Toni like not main evented with a title match before on a pay-per-view? Like, like, was it maybe
He's
like
done
an
it with the
unsanctioned
lights out match in
Lights
the
Out.
past.
Okay, so I guess there's some precedent, but that's not sanctioned, John, right?
No, but neither was Jericho and Adam Cole. Should that have gone on last?
Oh, true. Yes, I don't know. Whatever. Listen, I was a bit surprised by it, especially since Darby, like in an interview, said they were going to close the show. So I wonder if they knew whether or not they were good, or if they were under.
I could certainly imagine that they went back and forth with this. I'm of two thoughts. As I said on the preview, I feel I would have put these guys on last, but I guess your argument is that this identical match following Anarchy in the arena, do you put them in a position that it was a great match, but they couldn't follow Anarchy in the arena? You might have run that risk.
Mm-hmm.
And in this one, they went out, they had an unreal match, and you don't have any of that discussion. But I think I still would have put it on last. I don't know if it's I think a lot of people are just going to look at this match, and I thought like they absolutely blew this out of the water. I thought that this was athletically, this was incredible. This was incredible for 27 minutes and
different enough from Anarchy in the arena that I think it could have been a very successful main event on its own.
I do too. I think in hindsight, like I don't think there was necessarily one that it would have impacted things. Like I think this would have followed it if it was this exact match.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that Anarchy in the arena ended, like you do end it with a big angle at the end of it, but it wasn't so much so that I could have seen them feeling like we have to end the show that way either.
I think this could have survived the main event slot, but I think putting it in a semi-main slot is the safer bet. And I think doing that assures both matches will receive maximum energy from the crowd. Because even though this would have like garnered good reactions, there was like going to be a huge chance that like people weren't going to react to like a good portion of this if it had to follow Anarchy in the arena.
It would have probably affected the start of the match.
Yeah,
that's for sure. This also started minutes after Succession ended.
Again, no spoilers, please. Okay.
What am I going to do? How could I have any spoilers?
Eternity ban for any Succession spoilers, including you, John.
I how would I know anything that happened? Like, you know what I was doing.
Let's stop even encouraging people right now.
Yes. Sammy Guevara comes out with Ty Mello, and we get the cue cards coming back, and they announce that they are expecting a baby. And in 2023 booking, I was like, okay, he's definitely losing. There's no way the expected father is getting the win here. This would be too happy of a moment.
Well, I definitely thought this took away any chances of him turning back heel after this. And yeah, like Ty Mello hasn't wrestled since March, so timing kind of checks out.
Yeah.
Congratulations to them. That's amazing.
Congratulations to both of them. It's great news. And as Tony Schiavone said, only in AEW can we go from a wonderful announcement like that to this bizarre video for Darby Allin he's at like a Vegas chapel for a wedding emceed by a Elvis impersonator, and the bride, I guess, is wearing a MJF cardboard cutout mask, and Darby shows up as the groom and murders this person, and they have to dispose of the body, and Darby is out in this bizarre Elvis costume for the biggest match of his life.
Yeah.
And Tony Schiavone was just like, the fuck are we doing? He's like, only in AEW could we get a birth announcement followed by that.
It was exactly a Darby Allin entrance. Everything you would expect a Darby Allin Las Vegas themed entrance to be. I thought it was pretty cool.
And then MJF descends from a throne wearing the devil mask, and Tony is outraged at the gall, the ego of this man to lower himself in a throne. I was like, we just watched a advanced AV project that took probably weeks from Darby Allin versus I'm going to come down in a chair. And he's got the devil mask on, and it was like three really different entrances. And I mean, Sammy Guevara wasn't so much an entrance, but it was like a memorable part of his entrance. And then it's like Jungle Jack was just like, I did not get the memo about anything special.
His budget is
regular theme, and it was no frills at all for Jack.
He pays his budget for his theme song.
He should have driven down on the car that he's driven to Las Vegas.
He should have had a live the band that sings that song. What's their name? Tarzan. Who does that? Baltimore. Are they still active?
I doubt it.
Could Tony Khan have hired Baltimore Baltimore should have played Anarchy in the arena.
How much was the band budget on this show? Because they were going to get their money's worth in the next.
I mean, I don't know how much the Violent Idols cost.
Is that what their names are?
I'm not
Violent
assuming
Idols?
much. Yeah.
Okay. So the match begins, and I'm going to do my best here. This was a athletic tour de force among these four, and dude, I just thought, like, Sammy Guevara had, like, to me, one of the most impressive performances of his career.
He had dad energy. Like, it was like he had new dad energy, okay, which he's going to need a lot of in a few months. But it was just like, I just made the announcement, tonight's my night. I'm gonna just light this place on fire, and he did.
He pretty much did. So the three take turns with MJF in the corner, but then MJF is sent to the floor, so they start going. And these three, I mean, it's just incredible watching the sequences here. We see just some of the highlights here. Early on, Darby did use a side headlock takeover on MJF, which we would revisit later. Darby hits his crazy lope and is caught by Guevara with a cutter on the floor that looked incredible. And then Guevara takes out everyone and hits a frog splash on MJF. There was a sign facing the hard camera that read, "Phil is a cancer." And then mysteriously the sign disappeared. Yes. I didn't get the longest look at this. I'm pretty sure this guy had spelt Phil Phill.
No. Come on. No
Someone
way.
double check for me. I'm pretty sure there was a second L, but I couldn't rewind.
So he's talking about someone else.
He must be.
Okay.
MJF uses the side headlock takeover on Darby, but he kicks out and then he spits on Darby and calls him a worthless piece of shit, just like all these people. And then all four take each other down. The crowd is applauding this. And then we had a series of each guy using one of their mentors' moves. We had a Scorpion Death Drop from Darby. Guevara hit a code breaker. Then Darby, it was the kill switch being used by Jungle Boy and ending with MJF using the Crossroads.
Love it. So great.
Really great idea that they had here.
You're right. It's a PIHLL.
Never change. MJF gets on the mic. He tells Sammy, listen, with the new baby coming, you need the money. What does this wrestling contract pay you? Lay down. And Sammy says, okay, I'll lay down. Not a person in this building bought this, but when he went for the inside cradle, it did lead to a pretty heated near fall. Yeah. So it did get the pop. GTH gets stopped. Sammy goes for the walls when Darby applies the Scorpion Deathlock onto Perry, but both submissions are broken as MJF and Jack Perry lock hands. There was a four-way submission spot, and the crowd is chanting, fight forever, forever in this four-way submission spot. Just keep this submission going.
It was like a Ouroboros.
Exactly. Yes. Took the words right out of my mouth. Darby then sprinted on the floor, clotheslining Perry and MJF over the guardrail. This looked nuts. I mean, in the grand scheme of things on this show, maybe you're not going to remember this, but I was just like, my God, this looked insane as he just drilled these guys. So then we have a four-way standoff, and MJF pokes them in the eyes. Then they all drill MJF, and it's Guevara with a cutter off the top, code red by Darby, and an elbow to the back by Perry. We go into a three-way sequence with Perry, Darby, and Guevara, all going for these covers, including a crucifix by Perry on Guevara with a bridge by Darby. I mean, it was incredible. It was so fluid.
They got a standing ovation. After
this crowd was they were in awe of what they were seeing.
Yeah.
MJF then brings out the blonde bombshell. And I mean, before I could even type it, Taz is immediately tying this to Chris Candido.
Okay. I was wondering who you're talking about, but that's the top rope power bomb.
This was the move Candido saw Benoit do in Japan, and he just fell in love with this move, and it became like his big move was the blonde bombshell. And you're going to hear about this a lot on Dark Side this week with Candido being the subject.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It was wonderful that Taz was on commentary for this because he actually happened to correct.
He got it. He immediately, noted it. So that was very cool.
Like Excalibur rightfully, would have assumed awesome bomb, but Taz knew the connection to Candido and MJF. Yeah.
Yes. And MJF is actually selling his arm after delivering this, but it's all a ploy to low blow Guevara. And then he pulls out the dynamite ring. Darby nails him with a skateboard to the back of the head and goes for the coffin drop. And dude, this coffin drop, I thought he like crushed MJF's face. He came down and it was not on the chest. It looked so brutal. And then he goes for the headlock takeover. Jack Perry dives in to break it. And they're screaming that Darby would have been champion. Big slap fight between Perry and Darby. Not too far from the home of Power Slap here in Vegas. Could have tried this out at the Apex.
Yes.
MJF gets the belt and Perry blocks it, and Sammy Guevara takes MJF out to the floor and the belt lands in Perry's hands. And there is Darby, all discombobulated. And the announcers are very good on this whole match and tying this all, and how Darby said, you won't take advantage and have that killer instinct. And here is Jack Perry having this realization, and he opts not to use it, and this crowd boos.
He even like looked up in the sky as if he was like, hey, Dad, should I join the dark side? That sort of thing. And yeah, the crowd wanted to see the turn. And
Dylan McKay would have done this in a heartbeat.
Oh, 100%. Brandon. I loved how like they had Darby prior to this use the skateboard on MJF. Like Darby's not above this. He's a baby face, and they're here to show that, Jack Perry is a different type of baby face.
So by dropping the title onto the floor, Darby recovers and he applies the Last Supper, and Jack Perry kicks out of this. And I feel this was just going so fast that people could not appreciate how protected that Last Supper has been.
Totally.
I don't know. I don't think anyone's ever kicked out of this. To me, this was like a big spot that Jack Perry got, but it was just so much was happening that I feel it wasn't as pronounced as it could have been.
It was a big spot to me because, I don't really recall anybody kicking out of, like, it's a very protected pinfall. So, yeah.
And then we're just going crazy here. Flying knees by Guevara, a GTH onto Perry. Darby then shoves Guevara off the top, and Darby goes for the coffin drop, but MJF is back into the ring, and he places the title onto Jack Perry's chest. So Darby doesn't see that he lands onto the belt, and MJF picks up Darby and uses the side headlock takeover to pin him at 27 minutes and 49 seconds. Whoever came up with this finishing sequence was brilliant. I thought this was like a perfect ending to this match.
100%.
Dude, this match was out of this world. Incredible. I'm not the... Listen, I truly appreciate we're about to talk about Anarchy in the arena, but for what I enjoyed the most, this was the match for me on the show. I thought honestly this might have been the best like 4-way I've ever seen.
Yeah, I would not fight anybody to, if you had two incredible candidates, and this did not main event, but I think they definitely convinced a lot of people that they should have, and that's I as much of a compliment as I think you can give these four. It was such a beautifully designed match involving all four men. And where do we start here? Like, first of all, the entrances I thought were meaningful. They were grand. I love the spot of everybody hitting their mentors' finishers. Like, you had so many different chapters throughout the match to keep your focus and to keep your attention. So many memorable things about it. The baby, like, the MJF bringing up the baby to get Sammy to turn, leading to a great small package. The 4-way submission, the Mexican standoff with the elbow, and the ending with the eye poke. The Canadian destroyers, like. Perry, like going through this sort of like moral, debate about whether or not he should use the title, which is something I hope they continue to build on and that they finally execute so that we, get that big reaction. But no matter what you thought about the build, and it's definitely, received mixed reactions, especially from us, but from the audience as well. It was always going to come down to this match that's going to leave the lasting legacy, and they knocked it out of the park. They delivered this beautiful match of the year contender. And for a lot of people, I wouldn't doubt that they would agree with you that this might be the best 4-way that they've seen.
I just thought this was out of this world, and I was expecting a phenomenal match from these four. It was really I don't know what more I could say about it other than it was a must-see match on this show, and that set things up for the main event. with Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and Hangman Page against the BCC's Bryan Danielson, Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, and Wheeler Yuta. And we've got a live performance by the Violent
Idols.
The Violent Idols. And this front man for the Violent Idols certainly was debated in terms of this man's choice of mask. I'm imagining this is like, dude, I've never heard of this band before. I imagine this is his mask he wears, but to someone that has never seen them before, I think Max Caster would have definitely taken issue with
it was a black mask with like, a bit of red like on the chin, and obviously if you see the imagery, and I think with the idea of blackface on the mind, thanks to that Max Caster rap, that's immediately the first thing I certainly thought of.
I think even without the rap, that would have been the natural connection you would have made to this.
Sure, but I mean, it was also fresh on the mind, which probably didn't help things. But I mean, I this is not like, I think, that big of a band to my knowledge, like at least judging by their Instagram count, follower count. The guy normally wears masks. I guess it's like a Slipknot type of thing. So kind of unfortunate, and maybe just poor choice for any night. But especially,
what's a great color for a mask? Anything but that. Any other color probably is okay.
Right.
That'd be a good rule. So they are performing Wild Thing as BCC enters through the crowd, and they've all got like their like cut off like jackets
with their Mox jackets.
Yeah. And they've got the names on them, with the best one being Claudio's that just reads Swiss.
Yeah. That's his nickname.
That should be his name after this.
Oh, Swiss. Sure. So what's Swiss? Yuta just says Yuta, right? And Danielson was what? He didn't have one.
I didn't see Danielson's if he had one or not. We also had Don Callis on commentary, so you knew he was getting involved somewhere. And dude, this was just insane to follow, because we have 8 guys and they are in all different parts of the arena and eventually backstage. You have the eye for this. Like, what did you think about the directing of this match and trying to keep on top of everything? Because when the camera was not on Nick Jackson for about 5 minutes, all I'm thinking of is there's no way this guy is just taking a powder for 5 minutes. What is this guy doing and not realizing none of it's being captured?
It was chaotic.
Yeah.
Which I think
helps.
Is part of the intent of the match, like I'm not
this is quick cuts and violence that kind of does add to the chaos that you are conveying.
Plus you had this dude in the blackface mask playing Wild Thing the entire time, like it's just this match was stimulus overload. Okay. And I think that was like the effect that was intended. And therefore if the camera or if the director misses a few things here and there, some things that like, man, like, for instance, like Kenny taking or Mox taking like, the thing into the barbed wire. Some of those things that you would hope that they would catch, but the general feeling of chaos, I think was effective.
Oh, I certainly think they conveyed that portion of it. And I'll be honest, like I did not feel this, like this was crazy. And I'm sure it was a nightmare to try and block all of this and kind of direct this. But it to me was just like added to the chaotic nature that you're trying to get across here. So like everyone thought, the first person to bleed was Rick Knox.
Of course we don't see how. Like
no, dude, plenty of people bled, and I cannot tell you what caused it, including like Moxley must have just seen Steve Macklin on Friday and just made a mental note that
he must have just sneezed and started.
He could have. One early moment of the match sees Hangman Page face to face with Bryan Danielson, and he removes the eye patch and has a screwdriver. But then Yuta gets involved, dude. Wheeler Yuta, they gave so much before we even get to the ending. He was like the guy that was always there to save. He got to kick out of the buckshot lariat. They made a concerted effort that this was a leveling up for Yuta, who was going to be in many ways like the MVP for the BCC.
he definitely gained the most out of this. I mean, you have, 8 guys, 7 of which are already established stars, people who have won championships. Yuta is just sort of like still the young lion of this mix, and he came out of it gaining the most for sure.
The Young Bucks made their way up to the entrance, and for the first, what would you say, 5-6 minutes, they're continuing to play Wild Thing, and you're just wondering how
more
long...
than that, dude. They played like 3 rounds of Wild Thing.
Yeah, it went for a period. I didn't know how long this guy's voice.
What did you think about it this year? I mean, because they tried the gimmick last year. This year was a live band. If the BCC are involved in Anarchy in the arena again, do we get it again next year?
To me, I was glad that they cut it off when they did. It was fine. I would not have, had this gone any longer, I think it would have become a detriment.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And last year they cut it off at some point too.
Yeah, eventually.
But I mean, just even the idea of it, I liked it.
It's part of the DNA of the match at this point that
it's just crazy. It's hard to focus. You could barely hear the announcers. It's like, again, seamless overload, I think, was the point of the match.
So the Bucks make their way to the entrance and they super kick the front man here, and he's done for the night.
Big babyface reaction.
Yes. Moxley and Omega fight near the entrance, and they fight over the large Double or Nothing poker chip that bonds these two, going back to the first Double or Nothing. And like any poker chip, has barbed wire attached to the back of it, which both men ended up getting suplexed on, and Omega getting a fork stabbed into his forehead. So Matt and Claudio fight into the concourse, which sees Claudio use a giant swing, delivering Matt's head into the trash can. And actually, at that point, when I saw his head go into that trash can and then do like a flip off of the counter where the concession area is, I was thinking at that point, like, Matt is just killing himself in this match. And at the end of this, I was like this guy just came in and he was like, let's see what my body can withstand in this match. That seemed to be Matt's wish.
Yeah.
The announcers start to debate about what is stuck in Moxley's back. If it's glass, if it's a part of the chip, they didn't know what was lodged in his back, but
there was something besides barbed wire attached to the chip, and it was really hard to tell because
it was like some black.
There might have been like
material.
Glass. Sure, why not throw a bit of glass in there?
Throwing a glass, throwing a leaf blower, and then we see a Boston Crab crossface combo onto Nick Jackson by Moxley and Yuta, and Matt returns. Oh, sorry. Claudio and Matt also made their way outside, and Matt was pile driven into the back of a pickup truck and comes back selling his neck, and he super kicks John Moxley to break the Boston Crab, and his shoe explodes in Moxley's face. This is like what they warned you as a kid about, like wearing LA lights, and if you step into a puddle or something, like what could happen to you. Goodness, and I never believed it, but my parents wouldn't buy me LA lights.
Wow. Well, I had pumps and they never exploded like this, but
well, to me, it's like, this to me would be really bad for John Moxley. It would be catastrophic for Matt Jackson. Like, if the explosion is from your shoe,
okay,
like your foot is taking the brunt of this, no matter what face, how close the face is, like your foot is fucked 100%.
Well, I mean, you don't know what sort of protective coating this Jordan, like
nothing. We literally saw they just took his shoe off and his sock. He had no protection underneath.
Probably more protection than Moxley's face, though.
Well, he lived.
It looked really cool. Okay, exploding fists, exploding feet, exploding heads.
This is how Sean should have beat Brett in Anaheim.
Exploding.
The boyhood dream has just exploded.
Is this the new level of wrestling? Is this where we're at now? Like exploding, like clothesline, exploding elbow drops, like, or we just adding.
Dude, imagine imagine a buckshot lariat that had.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, give it to me.
Moxley comes back after his face was ripped off by the pumps, and he's got thumbtacks, and he pours them onto the mat. It's like, oh, we've seen thumbtacks a million times. What are they going to do here? Well, they take off Matt Jackson's shoe and his sock, and they lift up Matt Jackson. And dude, my stomach turned here knowing what was about to happen. And they dropped this guy's foot onto these tacks. Dude, I just did not need to see this. I did not need this visual.
It's so interesting, like our human psychology and what we react to. Because like we've seen a million times people like fall on their backs on thumbtacks, like even like I don't know, get thumbtacks in their hands and their faces. But it's like something about like the foot that we just can't stand. We can't even stand Lego spots. And certainly the thumbtack is taking it to the next level. This is just because like we're so sensitive to like our feet not even touching anything but comfortable sole.
Isn't there like the psychology of like like running across like like fire embers and stuff? It's just like if it's a mass amount of it that it almost
like a thumbtack board. Yeah. Is this the next, like, do people do this on retreats? Walk across a thumbtack?
I would like to know Matt Jackson's psychology that went into the spot, because it looked brutal, but they promised brutal and they delivered it to you. And then he takes a Death Rider and kicks out at 2. And then there's a cutter to Nick onto the tacks. We see a V trigger to Claudio, Busaiku knees onto Omega and Hangman, and then they place tacks into Matt Jackson's mouth for a European uppercut by Swiss. Yuta hits a bridging German, and Page goes to make the save and got there. Like you could argue he was a little late here on the save, but nonetheless, big return here from Hangman. Omega and Page fight together, and they make the comeback. There's a dead eye on Danielson, one-winged angel on Danielson, and you think it's over. Yuta makes the save for the team, and then here's Hangman. He's like 25 minutes into this. Orihara moonsault to Claudio on the floor. And at this point, Don Callis has made his way ringside, and Yuta ducks the buckshot. Callis hands off the screwdriver to him, and Omega is in the ring, turns around, and he sees Don Callis, and everyone's thinking, finally, he's going to get his hands on him. When a man with a hidden identity runs into the ring, nailing Omega, and reveals himself to be Konosuke Takeshita, who is aligned or still with Don Callis, and this crowd is pissed. And Yuta uses the screwdriver to Kenny Omega and applies the seatbelt and pins Kenny Omega in 26 minutes and 57 seconds to end a violent spectacle.
I don't know how to review this thing, man. It's like, it was just like a barrage of just everything, So this match, I thought, had the challenge of justifying its spot in the main event, and I thought it absolutely achieved it. There's no match like this. I mean, there are a lot of like brawls, but there are no matches involving the Blackpool Combat Club. It's specifically the style of brawling that like Jon Moxley has ushered that makes this such a perfect match type for that just complete, just chaotic, violent style. And I love the story that they ended up telling here, where it was very clear that this was the Blackpool Combat Club's game, and the Elite were overwhelmed. They're not used to this type of match and this level, and they were basically down several moments here. There were several handicap advantages for the Blackpool Combat Club, and I think a lot of wonderful like underdog positions that pairings of the Elite found themselves in, all building up to this wonderful sort of like little mini reunion between Page and Omega, where they were able to do a lot of their tag team spots again in sort of this last ditch effort to try to like make up for whatever however much they were down. But it was spectacular. It was everything you wanted it to be. It never dipped in energy once. It was crazy and completely pay-per-view worthy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, these last two matches were spectacular for what they were. Totally divergent matches from one another. No one is confusing one with the other. But yes, was this the most violent match in AEW history?
I mean, hard to say. I wouldn't say so. Like, what would you say is the most violent match in AEW history? Are we talking about blood loss, like being the principal determinant of that?
Yeah, I think that I think your short list would be. I would have to give it some thought, because we've also seen some really violent ones on Dynamite. The pay-per-view ones that come to mind for me are Moxley with Kenny Omega, the Lights Out match, and Moxley Hangman recently. That was pretty violent.
That might have been it, actually.
Yeah.
In terms of imagery. But I mean, this was.
I'll be honest, watching this, like that Impact main event on Friday was pretty goddamn violent. I mean, it was like not a far cry from this, like with Steve Macklin and PCO.
I think, like calling it the most violent match in AEW history was just sort of like a hook, like a tagline for you to get excited about. Ultimately, coming out of the match,
It was a hard sell at the end of that show. I mean,
right.
It's, you have a John Moxley stating that. I think like that would be sort of, if you're on the fence about buying a show and that's your last impression on Dynamite, I think it probably swayed some buys.
But if you're like, like watching this match based off of a promo, like I don't think you'd come out of this complaining whatsoever. Like this was everything it promised to be. It was anarchy inside an arena. And you had a satisfying, like storyline turn here from Takeshita, which elicited a whole lot of Ibushi chants from this crowd. So
it opens it up now because afterwards, Don Callis used his belt to choke Kenny Omega, and they still left it as a question if this means Don Callis and Takeshita by extension are with the BCC or not. The BCC were standing around, but it's not as though there was some big embrace or this was a big plan. So, and Excalibur said as much, that the follow-up is on Wednesday on Dynamite. So you do have a story that comes out of this. You have a lot of different combinations, like from Takeshita and Omega, and the natural question of if Takeshita joined the BCC, the opening that the Elite need a fifth man.
Very much so, yeah. Of course, we have Blood and Guts coming up, which tends to be like the second half of these Anarchy in the arena / stadium stampede matches. And I think it sets up a wonderful chapter 2, where the stakes could even be higher for these groups. And I hope Okada Ibushi, team up with the Elite. But I don't know. I don't know if he's coming.
You do have Brandon Cutler.
Yeah. Sure.
So what did you think overall of the show? Is this a thumbs up show for you? Because this is a really tough show to grade, because those two matches were like those two matches made the show for me. I have a really hard time criticizing this, but in terms of the entire show, it was like up until those last two matches, this would have been an underwhelming AEW show for me.
Yeah, but
the Battle Royal was very good. I like the tag match, the FTR match, a bit more than you. But
this show was not sold on anything but the top two matches, right? So when you asked, did you get your money's worth? I absolutely have to think we all did.
Yes.
Yeah, because they didn't just deliver like very satisfying versions of what they promised. I thought they were exceedingly better than what I even expected in both cases. So yeah, 100%. And the Battle Royal I thought was really good.
Yeah, the Battle Royal is really worth it if you have the time to check it out, because they did a very good job with the Battle Royal. All right, we're going to send it off to you. So if you would like to call in, you can join the StreamYard room. The link was sent out to all of our members at postwrestlingcafe.com. And for $6 a month, that gets you access to the cafe. And this coming week, 4 shows available for Cafe members, including Wednesday night after our Dynamite review. We're going to be jumping on the Cafe, and we will be reviewing the first episode of this season of Dark Side of the Ring, covering Tammy Sitch and Chris Candido. So that is Wednesday night. And then we will have Rewind Away on Thursday, covering NXT TakeOver 2 or Brooklyn 2. Is that what it was?
Yes, Brooklyn 2.
2.
Samoa Joe and Shinsuke Nakamura.
That's right. Friday's Rewind to SmackDown. And then Sunday, Karen Peterson and Bruce Lord are reviewing Dominion. PostWrestlingCafe.com and video.postwrestling.com.
And also starting this Wednesday, exclusive reviews of Dark Side of the Ring every single week after our Dynamite reviews.
That's right. Every Wednesday, we'll be doing the review of Dark Side on the Cafe right afterwards. And this week, Brandon Thurston and I will be chatting with Evan Husney from Dark Side of the Ring. So you can look out for that later on this week. So we have calls.
Yeah, let's go first of all here to Brian. Hey, Brian, welcome to the show. What did you think of tonight's show?
Am I coming through okay?
Yes, you are.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good, because carry on my wayward hosts. There'll be peace here at Post. Lay your weary headphones at rest, but not until this show is done. This
paper. Could you sing that for 10 minutes for Anarchy in the Post Office?
I'm going to need a mask for that first.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, goodness.
Right. Yellow or green or something.
You got to watch your colors for sure.
Yeah, I know. I do. Oh, boy. Yeah. I Googled that band. He does usually wear masks of different colors. But
like a white mask, right?
Something like that. Yeah. Similar design. But yeah, that was a choice.
Decided to go rogue tonight.
I'll say. This pay-per-view did not touch the last pay-per-view, Revolution, and for a while, I was thinking the best match was the Blackjack Battle Royal, which had a lot of good highlights to it, including the Lucha Collective coming together with a Bandito with the vertical suplex and 3 others like protecting him. I wish they could have carried through that until the end of the match, but they didn't have their plans together. But yeah, if I'm ever going to watch a show again on Bleacher Report, it will be the last 2 matches, which I thought were just incredible. But there are also some really big moments throughout the show. And while I think the bulk of the show was weak, I also think that they could stand to spread the pay-per-view love to other cities, not just Vegas every Memorial Day and Chicago every Labor Day. And also, I expect sometime later for MJF to say that he's the father.
Wow. Ouch. Hey, so John, like, judging by today's attendance, would you classify this as a success? Like, is this enough to get AEW to return again next year? The show.
Cause this had been hovering around like under 7,000 for weeks, and then they did move some tickets recently, and I don't know if that I'm pretty sure, like Brandon was saying, like it had coincided with like some like discounted prices. So I don't know what the gate is, and I think that would be somewhat indicative in terms of the like how this. You could certainly look like the demand was well down for this show when you compare it to other pay-per-views that they have had in Vegas. And if that's the case, like maybe you do look at the fact that Vegas, it's you're marketing towards a fan base that's going to travel, and how many people that they have a trip in mind and they're going to Toronto next month, for instance, or maybe they're planning to go to All In, and traveling to Vegas for Double or Nothing is not that's kind of the difference when you have a traveling crowd and suddenly you're doing more pay-per-views or more important shows that you could benefit from, going to different markets where you would have the higher demand for a show. But obviously AEW, they really do like having these signature events in a city every single year and creating that tradition.
Any other thoughts, Brian?
Yeah, I just read on Twitter Trevor Dame's recap of the post-show press conference, and it seems like the best points of the press conference were with MJF and Bryan Danielson. So I'll probably check
any news
later. No news, no.
Okay. Cool.
And also, quick question before I log off. Jordynne Grace is leaving Impact. Where do you think her future endeavors lie?
Thanks very much, Brian. I think she would be an asset to either company, and I would say that would be like I'd be going aggressively after her if I was either company. I think she's in a very good position to be moving to one of those companies, and it's a blow to their knockouts division losing her. They've, especially over this past year, really gotten behind her, and yeah, I think that she has a very unique look and is very, very good worker. So I think that's both companies could definitely gain from having her. Like she would be, to me, like a totally different style of performer you could have in WWE on either side, to work with a Bianca or to work with any of your, she can work babyface or heel, but I think coming in as a heel would be a good start there. But yeah, she could also work well in AEW too.
Let's go to some super chats here from earlier on in the show, and thank you guys for your support, especially if you guys are watching live. Jay Caleb show sends $5. Thank you, Jay Caleb. He says a lot of people still say Yuta doesn't fit in. He looked great tonight.
They did a tremendous job with Yuta in the main event. Like obviously when you look at the different priorities to get across in that match, Wheeler Yuta was a high priority for sure.
I really hope they make a big deal out of it coming out of this, like just remind everybody that, hey, this is like, what's the next stage for Wheeler Yuta? So let's see. Let's go up next to Sin City Saint, who sends $10. Thank you, Sin City Saint. He says, can't wait for Jimmy Uso to hit Roman with an exploding super kick. Good match, but 4-way was my match of the night. Also, Kenny spoke post-match stating he has 1 or 2 friends he can still call. Michael Nakazawa. Okay.
Yes, of course. And
Dan Chicadino.
That was who I was going to assume as well.
Yes. All right.
Maybe some of his friends from Deep South.
Maybe. Sin City Saint also sent $5. Thank you. He says, as somebody from Vegas, the problem with having the event over the holiday is room prices skyrocketing. Okay, so probably drives away some fans, he says.
Yeah, but I mean, they've been running Memorial Day now 5 years in a row. So, I mean, this is not a unique weekend that they chose this year either. It's still like, even when you look at, what they put in there, like it's a big building, the T-Mobile Arena, but
don't you also wonder if like there might be some sort of incentive for them to hold an event during a holiday weekend if these hotels can charge higher prices?
Yeah, like I'm sure, like, remember, they wanted to run 3 shows in Vegas this week. Like, they were going to do Dynamite, Rampage, and the pay-per-view this week, with the 2 at the MGM and then tonight at T-Mobile. And it was only because of the whole playoff schedule that Rampage got moved to Dynamite on the Wednesday night, but they were going to do 3 nights in Vegas.
Yeah, and by incentive I mean like perhaps a discount on a booking or something like that. This is all speculation, of course, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's something to that. Let's go to Matt Hahn, who just sent a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Matt. He says there are so many intriguing singles matches they could do with the Elite versus BCC. What is the best main event singles match for the first Collision?
It's really going to depend on what Collision is made up of. And if, like,
will it be
Collision is kind of being designed to not be a show with the Elite, so it would kind of almost defeat the purpose if you had that access. So yeah, for the first, I would do something very big on that first Collision, whether it's MJF defending the title against somebody, and you certainly have created that where you could do a singles match of MJF against any one of the people that were in the match. You could turn that around very quickly to do on June 17th, but there's different options. Obviously, the main event of the first Collision is going to be whatever CM Punk is doing on that show. But doing a big match would be,
specific to this feud. I think, you have so many possibilities, but like Yuta and
Omega
Claudio,
and Yuta is a rematch you could go to at some point. You could go to
Yuta and Claudio as a team versus the Bucks, or Yuta and Claudio versus Page and Omega. Page and Omega simply teaming back up again in a tag team capacity, I think is a big draw.
Yeah.
So have those two going up against Danielson and Mox. I think that'd be amazing.
Omega and Takeshita, you've clearly made at some point. Like you have a lot of matches to come out of this with.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Those super chats, guys. Let's go up next to Andy B. Welcome to the show, Andy B.
Hi guys, hope you're well. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Hey.
So guys, a fantastic weekend of wrestling. So I just wanted to say my 2 highlights of the weekend were Cody versus Brock Lesnar and the Anarchy in the arena match. One of them was like this throwback to old school Southern wrestling with WWE's production value. And this, I found, was a throwback to ECW with everything right from the violence and the chaos to the music playing over the match. It was just, both of them were just so different, but still over the top and campy in the way I want wrestling to be. And I am just here for it. This is what I want from 2 different Major League Wrestling companies.
Very well said. I very much agree with you. They were not just, throwbacks, but like great examples of both of them, to the highest quality. So very much agreed, Andy. Thank you.
Guys, also, I wanted to ask you one question about today's Fatal 4-Way match. So I felt a little underwhelmed with this with the build to this match more specifically, because I thought there was more sense of jeopardy in it if it was just a one-on-one feud between MJF and Darby Allin, because then I would have actually bought Darby Allin as a viable challenger to MJF's title. So I didn't find any jeopardy going into this match because I felt it was a bit of a foregone conclusion that MJF was just going to win. Where do you guys stand on this? Do you think the end justifies the means just because the match blew it all away? Or do you think it would have been better if they'd just gone with a more compelling story?
I think until we know how this show performs, it's hard to answer, because I think ultimately it's like a great match is great to have as the end product, but you're selling people on buying a pay-per-view. And did they do enough to sell people on the pay-per-view? Now, I think over time, people saw kind of Anarchy in the arena sort of, if this does a above average number, at least of what people expect for this show to do, I think Anarchy in the arena is going to get more of the credit than the 4-way. But I think at the same time, you can't state that they had no, like, there was a number 1 match, there was a number 2 match. And then, like Wei said, I think then there was sort of everything else. So they deserve whatever this show does. It's, part of it you attribute to this. I think ultimately that was an issue that they had, that going into this, you were expecting a great match, but did they sell you on any of the three as viable contenders to win the title. I don't think they got the best out of Darby, but I don't think anyone was expecting that for this.
There was a lot handicapping them ahead of this. You know, it's hard enough, I would say, to build a 4-way as like any sort of like definitive feud anyway, especially when you're talking about 3 other wrestlers who have never main evented a pay-per-view before and still haven't, unfortunately, at this point. But you're also going up against the biggest stars of your company being put in one of the biggest match types of this company's entire year in Anarchy in the Arena. So at no point, I would say, like, should we have expected this to simply carry the pay-per-view on its own without something like an Anarchy in the Arena? I think you bring up a great point, Andy, and one that I've kind of wondered myself. Like, the build itself, you know, would it have been better spent by simply putting it all behind Darby Allin rather than, you know, spreading it amongst the other 3? I would have said yes, you know, certainly a week ago. But again, so much of my memory, like, does the end justify the means? I think it kind of does, because this match ended up being so good. In history, I hope they continue to push this tonight's match as like a very definitive, you know, like career-making match for like 3 of the 4, and they continue to build this up so that the next time we get it, all 4 of them are legitimate headliners. Knowing that it's ultimately just a semi-main event, and when I say just, I really mean like, you know, it's a big deal, but you know, this was a great semi-main event. And so I would say I can't really complain, especially like just given the quality. But if you're strictly talking about the build, we could still definitely criticize a whole lot about it.
Thanks,
Okay, so just as I leave, one last question. Do we know if Jade Cargill is injured or anything along those lines? It seemed to be a rush decision to take the title off her today. Thanks so much.
She wrestled a pretty full match tonight. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't suspect that. But thank you, Andy, for the call. Let's get Hansi up next. Hey, Hansi, what's up?
Yo, what's going on? I same sentiments. Like, the last 2 matches were really good. I thought, like, overall, like, I thought there was, like, I expected some of the matches to have some overbooking in it, but I just thought it was like a 99 level Attitude Era pay-per-view in some of these matches with how much overbooked.
You need to go back and watch some 99 WWF pay-per-views and then watch this, Hansi.
No. But I'm talking about the overbooking.
30 minutes of Vincent Test, yeah.
No, I mean, but like, you know, like you know, just like a lot of dirty finishes, basically. You know what I mean? I'm just, you know, I just normally AEW is good with like not really relying on like some of those like, you know, dirty finishes or overbooking. Like, they'll keep them under chaotic matches. Like, I even thought that the Battle Royal, I enjoyed that match, but I thought that another feud should have used the title now. I thought like you could have done it, unless they're trying to put Hobbs in that position, because that's probably why they didn't put him in the Battle Royal. Maybe, I don't know, but I thought the Fatal 4-Way was probably my favorite match of the night. And the problem that I had with like the BCC versus the Elite, not so much with the BCC did a good job with their end of building it up. I thought, you know, they all killed it with that. I feel like, because I just saw, you know, WWE, and, you know, they just had a pivotal moment with the Bloodline storyline. So the comparison's fresh in my head, because the Elite storyline in AEW is kind of similar. It's not similar to the Bloodline storyline, but like they're both like been like prominent focus. Like, you know, the Elite's like whole storyline has revolved around the AEW like identity, basically. And I thought, like, for a big time reunion with Kenny Omega and Hangman, I don't think like a 30-second promo on Dynamite really like salvaged like the moment. You know what I mean? Like, at least with like the Bloodline storyline, people can talk about how it goes indoors and all that kind of stuff, but I think they land their moments a lot better. I think AEW has a hard time doing that. Like, I didn't even know about the Don Callis interview. Now I got to go watch it. And that promo probably would have sold me a whole lot more. I don't know why they undervalue their promos and like capitalize on the moment. That's the only thing I took away from it. But overall, the pay-per-view was decent with those 2 matches. I'll even say the Acclaimed versus House of Black match was probably one of the first matches where I thought like it actually like was like a competent booking in it, where I actually enjoyed the aggression and the Acclaimed and all that kind of stuff. I hope they run that back with a feud or something like that. But overall, I just thought the show was a little bit disappointing. But the final 2 matches left me happy. So that's all I can really say, though. So thanks a lot for letting me on. So peace out, guys.
Thanks, Hansi.
Thank you, Hansi. Appreciate it. Let's go up next to Kevin. Hey, Kevin, welcome. Kevin, are you there?
With am I here? I feel
you
like
are
I'm here. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yes,
yeah,
we can.
long time wellness policy caller, first time John Pollock caller. Hello, 2 a.m. John Pollock. How we doing?
Hi, Kevin.
Yeah, I saw Double or Nothing tonight in the movie theater. I think that's the move, unless you're doing NordVPN, of course. BR Live has done me dirty 5 too many times, and the atmosphere was great. There was like 10 of us all told, so it was rocking. But yeah, there was a rough stretch from OC retaining start of Adam Cole till about the latter part of the ladder match. I just was so intrigued by how like unhinged that ladder match became. It was so campy, and I just thought Arn was gonna take a crazy bump through a table or something. But no, like the crowd in the arena and in the theater seemed to pick up from, I would say, like the Jade entrance. Like that actually picked the crowd up and people were into it. And then that title switch was kind of expected in the back of, maybe long-term thinkers' minds, but it came off good to me. I'm not going to go too hard on that, but the last 2 matches, make no mistake, that was the crux of this pay-per-view. That's what needed to deliver, and the fact that it delivered, but delivered like and then some. I mean, I'm probably only going to be thinking of those matches for the next few days for sure.
Sounds like what was it like watching Anarchy in the arena in a theater?
It was wild. We were hooting and hollering and just all bets are off, just on our phones, just standing up. And I mean, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but it was crazy. Like, the AEW is going to miss camera shots like historically, but like that, you're not going to be able to, film that match perfectly. But I was laughing for like, this is not a bad thing. I was laughing for like at least 10 minutes straight just because of the sheer absurdity. Like Claudio dumps Nick Jackson on his head in the bed of a truck, and then he just like pauses and improvs, "I'm the king of Las Vegas." Like it was just good stuff. I just was like the Takeshita turn, maybe you could, see it coming, but the execution was phenomenal. That little heel smirk was just phenomenal. It was worth the $20 I paid USD.
Very good.
No, it sounds like a fun time. I think that the movie theater experience is probably a great way to enjoy a lot of these shows.
Oh yeah.
Hey, thank you, Kevin. Appreciate the call.
Later.
Okay, let's go to forum.postwrestling.com where we have a few pieces of feedback. I'll start, John. Let's go to Luke Kale from Quebec, who says, entertaining show overall with a really fun opener, lots of memorable moments, and 2 great final matches, but everything else was pretty average. I saw John say the show was built around the last 2 matches, but shouldn't the goal be for every match on the show to be great? I think AEW's booking of the mid-card has been pretty weak lately, and that was reflected in the crowd reactions tonight. They were very hot for key moments and for the main event, but subdued for everything else, and I don't blame them at all. As always, AEW delivers big time on the in-ring, but the weekly booking of storylines has lots of room for improvement.
All right, let's continue on with Cody from Maine, who writes in, not AEW's best pay-per-view by any means, but they stuck the landing. Early on, the consensus online seemed to be that the crowd wasn't into the show, but by the ending, it was clear they just didn't view certain matches as pay-per-view worthy, but they got up big time for the ones they did. To that point, I hope to see FTR in a bigger feud moving forward and to see Cole separated from Jericho after Dynamite. I thought 2022 was one of, if not Jericho's best years in ring, but unfortunately 2023 has seen a rough first half with the Starks and Cole programs. The last 2 matches in particular were stellar, with the in-ring delivering in the world title match as expected. I do wonder where Darby goes from here, while it seems like Guevara and Perry could have a program with the latter being a heel. As for the main event, I can't wait for Kota Ibushi to save the day, whether it's the Bloodline or the Elite. I love main event melodrama.
Darby's going to climb a mountain at some point, so
and right as will.
Yeah, so maybe that's it. I definitely think like a lot of the criticisms for the lack of interest in the undercard is completely valid. I mean, simply listen to our reviews week to week for evidence of that. They've not had the best build up, and I think that's putting it lightly. Let's go to Sal from California. I was at the show live tonight. Overall, the show was great. Anarchy in the arena was a little difficult to follow. It felt like complete sensory overload trying to watch everything at once. It was fun, but it's easier to watch on TV. Statlander's return was amazing and felt like the biggest reaction of the night. I'm very happy that she's back. The title match was the match of the night for me. I understand if others preferred Anarchy in the arena, but for me, the title match stole the show. One last note, at FanFest, Jungle Boy had by far the smallest line for autographs. I'm wondering if it makes sense to turn him heel soon. Well, I think they're flirting with the idea. So can he deliver as a heel, though? You know, can he deliver the type of character and performance that you'd want?
Yeah, I think that spot with the title that will be designed as something that really like kind of leads his story moving forward, that he had the opportunity and why he didn't take advantage of it, and then sees MJF with that same title use it, and that's how he escapes with it. Like, that guy's the champion and you're one of the losers in the match. David from Israel, weird show overall. Crowd was pretty bad and dead the entire show outside of popping for, I would definitely not say they were bad for the entire show. Outside of popping for the really big moments. Way too much interference and shenanigans in a lot of matches. First half of this show is a thumbs down, but the second half is a big thumbs up. I'd say in addition to the crowd being bad, JR was not good when he was in the booth for the first half, and it just made me trying to get into the show even harder. Overall, I'd say I enjoyed it, but it's probably the weakest overall pay-per-view for AEW since All Out 2020. I really think they needed something Punk related to tease his appearance at Collision, and they dropped the ball there. I really wish AEW would stop running the same towns over and over again. Crowds are really starting to burn out. I mean, again, I don't know how many people in that arena are Las Vegas natives as opposed to traveling crowds and such. Because Las Vegas, I think you are drawing.
But is that an argument to not go to a new town so you can get a hot new audience that wouldn't be likely to travel?
It's hard to say, right? Like, it's you run Vegas, and it's like there's not too many cities that you're going to get 10,000 people in as well at that point. But I think you always want to be exploring other markets, and I would not necessarily, like, if one city is not if it's down, like, I wouldn't just, well, we have to run Double or Nothing every year in Vegas. I think if there's places that have a higher demand, you go there, and you do want to, especially when there's so few pay-per-views as well. Like, you can get to different markets and such.
All right. This just lastly, the CM Punk thing. Do you think we get more information on Wednesday, or do you think they leave it?
I think so. After Friday, it looks like they have put out around. They've moved about 6,000 tickets for the United Center. So I would not look at that as awful. But it's a far cry from, like, they have lots of tickets left to fill that building, which can hold 14 to 15. So what would you do? To me, I would
have announced him like 2 weeks ago. I mean, obviously you couldn't, but I would have announced him the moment that you knew that he was signed to come on.
I thought there would be some tease tonight, like maybe not like physically there or anything, but something like there was nothing, not even a hint of it, other than Buddy in the crowd with his sign with the 2 L's. So yeah, I would say you want to move as many tickets as possible. And is it a case of the audience that, like, this is sort of the demand for Collision, or is there enough of an audience that they don't know that CM Punk is going to be on this show? Or
maybe fans don't want to get burnt. I mean, you know, are there some fans that are hearing?
When does AEW burn you on these things? Like, that to me is,
in this case, it's there's definitely a reason to question, because I think we were led to believe that CM Punk was definitely going to be a part of Collision, and then we were told that some things were happening in the back. I mean, again, I don't want to speak for people that are parting with their money, but if I was one of those people, would I want to be sure? Would I like? And that's why I think AEW should let everybody know when they find out. That
I would make, at the very least, like, hints, or be more like, as opposed to now, like, there's nothing. Like, you're doing nothing, and nothing has led
some
to
puns.
6,000
Give us some puns here. You know,
I mean, can't spell the man's name without it, so why not?
That's it.
Go that direction. All right. We're going to wrap things up. So thanks to everyone for tuning in to our Double or Nothing review. Coming up on Monday, we have a bunch of shows coming your way, including Braden Davey will be live at 1 p.m. Eastern time with an NXT Battleground review. WrestleNomics Radio will be out, as Brandon is in Las Vegas, and I believe the press conference is still going on. So you will get your Brandon Thurston fix on Monday. And it turns out that the security guard that took the fireball from Chris Jericho, a Brandon Thurston trainee.
Really? Wow. Did he show him how to protect himself from fireballs? Obviously not.
Obviously not. That's usually
fireball defense.
Day 3 stuff. Yeah. All right. And then Monday night, Way and I will be live right after Raw with Rewind to Raw. So thanks to everybody for tuning in. And that concludes our Double or Nothing review.